In this video, we're breaking down 3 hours of SpongeBob fan theories to fall asleep to. Let's get started. First up, we got Bikini Bottom's nuclear origin, the atomic testing mutation theory. Bikini Bottom looks like a happy underwater town where sea creatures live normal lives. They work jobs, drive boats, and hang out with friends. But there's something strange about this place. The fish talk like humans, a sponge cooks burgers, a squirrel lives underwater in a glass dome. These things don't happen in the real ocean. So what makes Bikini Bottom so different? The answer might be hidden in the show's name itself. The theory goes like this. Bikini Bottom sits directly below a real place called Bikini Atoll. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States military tested 23 nuclear bombs at this location in the Pacific Ocean. The radiation from these explosions drifted down to the ocean floor and changed the sea creatures living there. The mutations gave them human-like intelligence, the ability to speak, and bodies that work more like people than animals. This isn't just some wild fan idea anymore. In 2024, one of the show's main writers confirmed it was true. Let's start with the real history behind this theory. Bikini Atoll is a ring of islands in the Marshall Islands, located in the Pacific Ocean. After World War II ended, the US government needed a place to test nuclear weapons. They chose Bikini Atoll because it was far from major populations. In 1946, they moved the 167 people who lived there to other islands. Then the testing began. Operation Crossroads was the first set of tests. The military wanted to see what nuclear bombs would do to ships. They brought 95 old warships to the atoll's lagoon and detonated 2 bombs near them. The first bomb, called Able, exploded in the air on the 1st of July 1946. The second bomb, Baker, exploded underwater on the 25th of July 1946. The Baker test sent a column of water 6,000 feet into the sky and created huge waves. The radioactive water fell back down and contaminated everything. The testing continued for 12 more years. Between 1946 and 1958, the US detonated 23 nuclear devices at Bikini Atoll. Some were dropped from planes. Others were placed on towers or barges. The largest test, Castle Bravo in 1954, was supposed to be a small explosion. Instead, it became the biggest nuclear test America ever conducted. The blast was 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The mushroom cloud reached 130,000 feet high. Radioactive ash fell on nearby islands, fishing boats, and huge areas of the ocean. All this radiation had to go somewhere. Most of it sank into the water and settled on the ocean floor. The fish, plants, and other sea life absorbed it into their bodies. Scientists who studied the area found mutations in the creatures living there. Fish had strange growths. Coral reefs died and grew back in weird patterns. The radiation changed the DNA of everything it touched. Now here's where SpongeBob SquarePants comes in. The show's creator, Steven Hillenburg, was a marine biologist before he became an animator. He studied ocean life and knew all about Bikini Atoll. When he created the show in the late 1990 seconds, he named the underwater city Bikini Bottom. This wasn't an accident. The name tells you exactly where the town is located, at the bottom of the ocean, below Bikini Atoll. Fans noticed this connection right away. They started asking questions. Why can these sea creatures talk? Why do they act like humans? Why do they live in objects that came from the surface world? The nuclear testing theory seemed to answer everything. For years, the show's creators stayed quiet about it. They didn't confirm or deny anything. This made fans even more curious. In 2015, Tom Kenny, the voice actor who plays SpongeBob, talked about it in an interview with the Huffington Post. A reporter asked him about the theory. Kenny confirmed that Bikini Bottom is indeed located at Bikini Atoll. He said the location was intentional. However, he also said he didn't think Hillenburg meant for the nuclear testing to be part of the story. At that time, the theory stayed just a theory. Everything changed in December 2024. Esquire magazine gathered the main voice actors from SpongeBob SquarePants for a reunion video. They talked about the show, their characters, and some popular fan theories. When the nuclear testing theory came up, Roger Bumpass, who voices Squidward, said he always liked the idea. He thought it made sense. Then Mr. Lawrence, who voices Plankton and has written many episodes, said something that shocked everyone. And that is true, Lawrence said. That is absolutely true. Bumpass was surprised. He had been telling people the theory wasn't true. Now he found out he was wrong. Lawrence explained further. He said that when they were developing the show in the first season, they talked about using this concept. They discussed how far they wanted to take the apocalyptic angle. Lawrence revealed that the original idea was even darker than fans thought. He said, like, the whole world is dead, except for Bikini Bottom. This means the show was supposed to take place in a post-apocalyptic world. The nuclear tests didn't just mutate the sea creatures, they destroyed everything on the surface. Only the ocean life survived, changed by radiation into intelligent beings. Bill Fagerbaki, who voices Patrick, asked about the mufflers. He noticed that many houses in Bikini Bottom are made from car mufflers. Lawrence confirmed this was part of the apocalyptic concept. All the debris from the destroyed surface world sank to the ocean floor. The sea creatures used it to build their civilization. This confirmation explains so many things about the show. Let's look at the evidence that was hiding in plain sight all along. First, there's the name. Bikini Bottom isn't a random phrase. It's a direct reference to a real place where real nuclear disasters happened. Hillenburg could have called it anything: Ocean Town, Coral City, Fish Village. He specifically chose the name of the nuclear testing site. Second, look at where the characters live. SpongeBob lives in a pineapple. Pineapples don't grow underwater. His pineapple house clearly came from the surface. Squidward lives in an Easter Island head statue. Patrick lives under a rock, but his rock is perfectly smooth and round like it was shaped by humans. Mr. Krabs' restaurant, the Krusty Krab, is made from a lobster trap. Sandy's house is an underwater dome with a tree inside. All of these structures came from the surface world. They're debris from human civilization. Third, the characters themselves show signs of mutation. SpongeBob is a sea sponge, but he looks like a kitchen sponge. His square shape isn't natural for sea sponges. Real sea sponges are round and bumpy. Squidward is supposed to be an octopus, but he only has 6 tentacles. His name says squid, but his species is wrong. These aren't just cartoon shortcuts. They're mutations caused by radiation. Fourth, the characters have abilities that real sea creatures don't have. They can talk in full sentences, they can read and write, they have complex emotions and social structures. They build technology and create art. They understand mathematics, science, and philosophy. None of this is normal for ocean life. Something changed these simple creatures into intelligent beings. Fifth, there are direct references to the surface world throughout the show. The characters know about cars, even though cars don't work underwater. They have televisions, phones, and computers. They celebrate human holidays like Christmas and Halloween. They eat processed foods that come in packages with human writing on them. All of this suggests they're living in the ruins of human civilization. The episode SB-129 provides more evidence. In this episode, Squidward accidentally freezes himself and wakes up 2,000 years in the future. Everything in future Bikini Bottom is made of chrome. The characters explain that this is what happened to their world. The chrome coating could be a reference to nuclear fallout or radiation. It shows that whatever caused the mutations is still affecting the environment thousands of years later. Some episodes show even darker hints. In Pressure, Sandy and the sea creatures argue about who's tougher, land animals or sea animals. When they go to the surface, SpongeBob and his friends start dying immediately. They can't breathe air anymore. They've adapted so much to underwater life that the surface world is deadly to them. This makes sense if the surface world is actually a radioactive wasteland. The episode Spongehenge takes place 3,000 years in the future. Bikini Bottom is abandoned and covered in sand. Stone monuments that look like SpongeBob stand in what used to be jellyfish fields. This suggests that whatever catastrophe affected the surface eventually reached the ocean too. The civilization that radiation created can't last forever. Now let's talk about why this theory matters. It changes how we see the entire show. SpongeBob isn't just a silly cartoon about talking fish. It's a story about survival after a nuclear apocalypse. The characters are the descendants of creatures that lived through humanity's worst mistake. They built a new society from the ruins of the old one. They're happy and optimistic because they don't know what came before. The past is lost to them. This also explains the show's weird humor and surreal moments. The characters do things that make no sense because their brains are mutated. They act on instinct and mutation rather than logic. Patrick is incredibly stupid because his brain developed wrong. SpongeBob's endless optimism might be a result of damaged emotional processing. Squidward's depression could be his genes trying to remember the tragedy that created him. The theory even explains why some characters are smarter than others. Sandy the squirrel came from the surface. She's not mutated like the others. That's why she's a genius scientist, while most of the fish can barely tie their shoes. Plankton is also highly intelligent, possibly because he absorbed more radiation than others due to his tiny size. The radiation affected different species in different ways. Mr. Krabs' obsession with money makes more sense too. In a post-apocalyptic world, resources are everything. His greed isn't just a personality flaw. It's a survival instinct amplified by mutation. He hoards wealth because deep in his genetic memory, he knows that scarcity leads to death. The show's writers knew all of this from the beginning. They built it into the foundation of the world. They just never said it out loud until 2024. Lawrence explained that they wondered how far to push the concept. They decided to keep it subtle. They didn't want every episode to be about nuclear war and death. They wanted to make a funny show that kids could enjoy, but the dark backstory was always there, hidden beneath the silly jokes and colorful animation. This confirmation also validates years of fan theorizing. Viewers weren't crazy for seeing these connections. They were noticing real clues that the creators deliberately planted. The theory wasn't a stretch or an overreaction. It was the truth that was hiding in plain sight for 25 years. Looking at the show now with this knowledge changes everything. The opening theme song shows a pirate ship on the surface and then dives down to Bikini Bottom. This transition represents moving from the destroyed surface world to the mutated ocean world. The French narrator who introduces episodes speaks from the surface, observing the strange creatures below. He's documenting what became of the ocean after the bombs fell. Even the show's art style makes more sense. The bright colors and exaggerated designs aren't just cartoon aesthetics. They represent a world transformed by radiation. Colors are brighter because light refracts differently through contaminated water. Shapes are stranger because evolution went wrong. The entire visual language of the show is telling us that this world isn't natural. Other locations in the show also fit this theory. New Kelp City, Rock Bottom, and other places SpongeBob visits are all parts of the same contaminated ocean floor. Each area developed differently based on how much radiation it received. Rock Bottom is dark and scary because it's in a deeper trench where more radioactive material settled. The creatures there are even more mutated than in Bikini Bottom. The theory also connects to real scientific concerns. Scientists who studied Bikini Atoll after the tests found that radiation stays in the environment for generations. It gets into the food chain and affects creatures that weren't even alive during the original contamination. The ocean is especially good at spreading radiation because water currents carry it for thousands of miles. If SpongeBob takes place at Bikini Atoll, then every creature living there would be affected by those 1946 to 1,958 tests. Some people argue that this theory makes SpongeBob too dark for kids. They say children shouldn't be watching a show about nuclear apocalypse. But that's the genius of how the show handled it. Kids can watch SpongeBob and just see funny talking fish. They laugh at the jokes and enjoy the adventures. They don't need to know about Bikini Atoll or radiation or apocalypse. The show works perfectly well as a simple comedy. But older viewers who know history can see the deeper layer. They can appreciate the cleverness of building a happy world on top of a dark premise. They can think about themes of survival, adaptation, and rebuilding. The show works on multiple levels at once. That's why it's been successful for so long. It offers something for everyone. The confirmation from Mr. Lawrence doesn't change what the show is. It just confirms what was always there. SpongeBob SquarePants is a show about nuclear testing. Bikini Bottom exists because of radiation. The characters are mutants. The world ended, and they're living in what came after. This was the plan from day one. The creators just waited 25 years to tell us. This revelation also opens up new questions. If the surface world is destroyed, what happened to humans? Are there any survivors? Is Sandy the only land creature left? Why did she come to Bikini Bottom? Is she studying the mutations, or is she a mutant too? The show has never fully answered these questions, and now we know why. The truth is too dark to explain in a kid's cartoon. The nuclear origin theory isn't just about explaining why fish can talk. It's about understanding that SpongeBob SquarePants is a story of hope after disaster. These characters live happy lives despite being born from tragedy. They don't know what radiation is or what nuclear bombs did to their ancestors. They just exist, making the best of their strange world. That's a powerful message. No matter how bad things get, life finds a way to continue. Even after the worst thing humans ever did, the ocean kept living. It changed, adapted, and created something new. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. The Krabby Patty secret formula, is it really crab meat? The Krusty Krab sells the most popular food in Bikini Bottom. Everyone loves Krabby Patties. Fish line up outside the restaurant every day to buy them. But there's something that makes fans wonder about these burgers. The owner, Eugene Krabs, is a crab. The burgers are called Krabby Patties. And there's one line in one episode that started a theory that won't go away. So fans keep asking, are Krabby Patties made from crab meat? This theory is one of the most famous and disturbing ideas in SpongeBob history. It suggests that Mr. Krabs is not just a greedy businessman, but someone who would use his own species as a burger ingredient. Before we go any further, we need to be completely clear about one thing. The show's creators have officially denied this theory multiple times. They say Krabby Patties contain no meat at all. Steven Hillenburg, who created the show, confirmed before his death in 2018 that Krabby Patties are vegetarian. Vincent Waller, a longtime writer and producer, has said repeatedly that there is absolutely no meat in the Krabby Patty. That's the official answer from the people who made the show. But despite these clear denials, the theory refuses to die. Why? Because of one line in one episode that seems to suggest something very different, and that's what we're here to explore. Not to prove the theory is true, because the creators already told us it's not, but to understand why so many fans believe it despite what they've been told. Let's start with what we know for certain about Mr. Krabs. His full name is Eugene Harold Krabs. He owns and operates the Krusty Krab restaurant. He's obsessed with money to an extreme degree. Multiple episodes show him choosing money over the safety and happiness of others. In Jellyfish Hunter, he captures and squeezes jellyfish to harvest their jelly for profit. In Born Again Crabs, he tries to sell SpongeBob's soul for 62 cents. In Krusty Love, spending money on his girlfriend Mrs. Puff causes him physical pain. The show consistently portrays Mr. Krabs as someone whose greed knows almost no limits. The theory really centers on one specific moment. It comes from Season 3, Episode 44, titled Midlife Crustacean. This episode aired in 2003. In this episode, Mr. Krabs is having a midlife crisis. He feels old and out of touch. SpongeBob and Patrick try to help him feel young again. Near the beginning of the episode, Mr. Krabs is eating at the Krusty Krab. He takes a bite of a Krabby Patty. Then he says something very strange. He says, "So that's what I taste like." This line is the foundation of the entire theory. Mr. Krabs directly states that the Krabby Patty tastes like him. The writers wrote this line. The voice actor Tom Kenny recorded it. The animation shows him saying it. This isn't speculation or fans reading too much into something vague. The line clearly exists in the episode. You can watch it right now. Mr. Krabs says the burger tastes like his own body. After this episode aired, the crab meat theory exploded in popularity. Fans discussed it everywhere online. Some people thought it was hilarious, dark humor hidden in a kids' show. Others found it disturbing. Everyone agreed that the "so that's what I taste like" line seemed suspicious. For years, this was considered one of the most believable fan theories because it had direct evidence from the show itself. But what does this line actually mean? There are several ways to interpret it. The simplest interpretation is that Mr. Krabs is making a joke. The burger is named after him, so he's playfully pretending it's made from him. This would be dark humor for a kids' show, but SpongeBob has always included jokes that adults understand differently than children. The problem with this interpretation is that Mr. Krabs says it in a casual, matter-of-fact way. He doesn't laugh. He doesn't wink at the camera. He just states it like it's an obvious observation. The darkest interpretation is what most fans jump to. They believe Mr. Krabs knows the patty tastes like him because it actually is made from crabs. This interpretation took off and became the most popular version of the theory. Fans started looking for more evidence to support it. They noticed the burger's name. It's called a Krabby Patty. Why would Mr. Krabs name his signature food after himself if it didn't contain crab? The name seemed like another clue. Then, in 2017, almost 15 years after that episode aired, the creators started pushing back hard against the theory. Vincent Waller addressed it on Twitter. He stated clearly that there is no meat whatsoever in a Krabby Patty. He said this multiple times when fans kept asking. Steven Hillenburg also confirmed that Krabby Patties are completely vegetarian and contain no animal products. Nickelodeon itself got involved. In 2017, the official Nickelodeon Instagram account posted a statement. It said, "We can 100% confirm that Krabby Patties are not made from crabs." They wanted to kill the theory completely. According to the official stance of the network and the show's creators, the crab meat theory is definitively false. Krabby Patties are veggie burgers. So why do fans still believe it? Partly because that one line exists and can't be erased. Once you hear Mr. Krabs say, "So that's what I taste like," it's hard to unhear it. The line feels significant even if the creators say it was just a throwaway joke. Many fans think the creators are denying the theory to protect the show's reputation as family-friendly entertainment. They suspect the dark joke was intentional but can never be officially admitted. Let's look at what the show actually tells us about Krabby Patty ingredients. The truth is, we don't know much. The secret formula is treated as a mystery throughout the entire series. It's what's called a MacGuffin in storytelling. A MacGuffin is something that drives the plot but doesn't actually matter on its own. The Krabby Patty formula's real purpose is to create conflict between Mr. Krabs and Plankton. What's actually in it doesn't matter to the story. Several episodes show us parts of Krabby Patties being made. In Season 1, Episode 6, a Pickles, we see SpongeBob assemble a burger step by step. He uses 2 buns with sesame seeds. Between the buns, he adds the patty, lettuce, cheese, onions, tomatoes, ketchup, mustard, and pickles in that exact order. This shows us the visible ingredients, but it doesn't tell us what the actual patty is made from. In Season 3, Episode 57, a Krabby Road, the secret formula appears on screen, written on paper, but the ingredients are written in complete gibberish. Just random letters and symbols that don't spell anything. Vincent Waller later confirmed the writers did this on purpose. They wanted to show the formula without actually revealing anything. The gibberish ensures nobody can read the secret. Other episodes drop hints about ingredients, but these should be taken as jokes rather than facts. In Season 5, Episode 82, The Great Patty Caper, Characters mention flour, barnacle shavings, and turmeric at various points. These sound like ingredients that could go in a veggie burger. But the episode is a parody of mystery movies and doesn't present these as the definitive formula. They're gag ingredients, not canonical facts. Multiple episodes reference love as a secret ingredient. In Season 3, Episode 52, Plankton's Army. Plankton finally gets to read the formula. It tells him to add a pinch of love. Plankton thinks this is ridiculous. But again, this functions as a joke. The show uses fake formulas and decoy ingredients all the time. We can't trust any single scene to give us the real answer. The running gag is that we never actually learn what's in a Krabby Patty. Season 5, Episode 87, A Friend or Foe, tells the origin story of how the Krabby Patty was invented. This episode shows young Mr. Krabs and young Plankton as best friends. They both worked at a terrible restaurant called Stinky Burgers. They experimented with different recipes, trying to create something good. After many failed attempts, they accidentally created something delicious. This burger became the Krabby Patty. The two friends had a falling out over it, which is why they're enemies now. Some fans thought this episode revealed that chum is in the Krabby Patty formula, but that's not what the episode shows. The episode explains that Plankton's restaurant, the Chum Bucket, serves chum. It shows how the two friends split up and became business rivals. It does not establish that chum goes into Krabby Patties. That's a misreading of what happens in the episode. The Krabby Patty formula remains hidden even in the origin story. So what can we actually say with certainty? Very little. The show deliberately keeps the formula secret. It uses gibberish text, cuts away at key moments, has characters lie about ingredients, and generally treats the whole thing as a mystery that will never be solved. This is intentional. The writers don't want us to know what's in a Krabby Patty because knowing would ruin the joke. Now let's address some other pieces of evidence that fans bring up but don't actually hold up under examination. Some fans claim that crabs are almost extinct in Bikini Bottom, leaving only Mr. Krabs and his mother. They suggest this proves Mr. Krabs killed all the other crabs. But this isn't accurate. While Mr. Krabs is definitely the most prominent crab character, other crabs do appear in the show. They show up as background characters and in one-off roles throughout the series. Crabs aren't common, but they're not extinct either. The show has a small recurring cast by design. Most episodes focus on SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Plankton. Background characters of all species are relatively rare. The fact that we don't see many crabs doesn't mean they've all been murdered. It just means the show focuses on its main characters, and only one of them happens to be a crab. Some fans point to Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl as evidence. Pearl is a whale. Whales and crabs obviously can't have biological children together, so Pearl must be adopted. The show has made jokes about this many times, but nothing in the show connects Pearl's adoption to Krabby Patties or suggests any violence against whales. Pearl's backstory is never fully explained, and her relationship with Mr. Krabs is just one of the show's many absurd elements. Using Pearl as evidence for the crab meat theory is pure speculation with no basis in any episode. Other fans mention that the Krusty Krab building is shaped like a lobster trap. This is true. The restaurant's design does resemble a lobster trap, which is a device used to catch and kill lobsters. But this is just a visual reference, a bit of clever art direction. It's not evidence of anything sinister happening inside the restaurant. Many buildings in Bikini Bottom are shaped like objects from the surface world. SpongeBob lives in a pineapple. Squidward lives in an Easter Island head. These are just fun design choices, not clues to dark secrets. What about Plankton's obsession with stealing the formula? Doesn't that suggest the formula contains something incredibly valuable or illegal? Not necessarily. Plankton's quest to steal the formula is the central conflict of the show. He's been trying since the first season. He's built robots, created elaborate disguises, and spent years scheming. But this is just how the show creates comedy. It's a rivalry between two restaurant owners. The Krusty Krab succeeds, while the Chum Bucket fails. Plankton wants the formula so he can finally win. His obsession doesn't require the formula to contain anything shocking, it just needs to be secret. The fact that he can't have it makes him want it more. This is basic storytelling. The formula is a MacGuffin. What matters is the chase, not what's actually being chased. Plankton's behavior tells us he's desperate and competitive, not that the formula is especially dark or illegal. So where does all this leave us? We have one suspicious line from one episode. So that's what I taste like. That's real. It exists. It's why the theory started and why it won't die. But we also have repeated, clear statements from the show's creators saying, Krabby Patties contain no meat. Steven Hillenburg himself said they're vegetarian. Vincent Waller has confirmed this multiple times. Nickelodeon posted an official denial. The most reasonable interpretation is that "so that's what I taste like" was a dark joke. The writers included it for shock value or adult humor without thinking it would create a major theory. Or maybe they did know it would start rumors, and they included it on purpose as an inside joke. Either way, it functions as a throwaway gag, not as confirmation of the formula. The show has always worked on multiple levels. Kids watch it and see funny talking fish having adventures. Adults watch it and catch references and darker humor. A line like "so that's what I taste like" works perfectly for this approach. Kids might not even notice it or think about it. Adults hear it and laugh at the disturbing implication. But implication is different from confirmation. Think about how many jokes and references appear in SpongeBob that aren't meant to be taken literally. The show is surreal and absurd. Characters do impossible things all the time. They light fires underwater, they have phones and televisions that shouldn't work in the ocean, they eat ice cream that doesn't melt. None of this is realistic. The show doesn't follow normal rules. So one weird line about taste doesn't necessarily reveal a dark truth. It might just be another absurd joke in a show full of absurd jokes. The crab meat theory is one of those ideas that's more fun to think about than to actually believe. It adds a layer of darkness to what seems like an innocent kid's show. It makes Mr. Krabs seem more evil and complicated. It creates interesting discussions among fans, but when you look at the actual evidence, it doesn't hold up. The evidence is one line that can be read multiple ways, plus a bunch of speculation and misreadings of other episodes. What we can say for certain is this: the show's text never confirms meat of any kind in the Krabby Patty. Creator statements explicitly say the patties are vegetarian with no meat. The show repeatedly treats the formula as a gag mystery that's never meant to be solved. The "so that's what I taste like" line fuels the theory, but it functions as a joke, not as a reveal. Everything else that fans point to as evidence is either misinterpreted or invented without any basis in the actual episodes. Does this mean the theory is completely wrong? According to the people who made the show, yes. Steven Hillenburg said it's wrong. Vincent Waller said it's wrong. Nickelodeon said it's wrong. That should be the end of it. But fans will continue believing it anyway because that one line exists and because the theory is too interesting to abandon completely. The crab meat theory shows how powerful one piece of dialogue can be. One sentence, delivered in a casual tone in a single episode from 2003, created a debate that's lasted over 20 years. It shows how fans engage with media, finding meanings and connections that might not have been intended. It shows how difficult it is to control the interpretation of your own work once it's out in the world. For the purposes of understanding SpongeBob SquarePants as it actually exists, we should accept the official answer. Krabby Patties are vegetarian. They contain no meat. The formula is secret because it's a plot device, not because it contains something dark. Mr. Krabs is greedy and morally questionable, but he's not a murderer or a cannibal. The show is a comedy about talking sea creatures, not a horror story about the seafood industry. But as a fan theory, the crab meat idea will never completely go away. It's too well known now. It's become part of SpongeBob's cultural legacy. Even people who've never watched the show have probably heard about it. It represents the darker interpretation that's possible with almost any piece of media if you look hard enough and ignore the creator's intentions. The theory remains one of SpongeBob's most persistent and darkest fan ideas. It's been officially denied multiple times by the people who would know best. But thanks to one memorable line and the mysteries the show deliberately built into its premise, the question continues to be asked. The answer from the creators is clear and consistent. No, Krabby Patties are not made from crabs. Whether fans choose to believe that answer is another matter entirely. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mrs. Puff's criminal past, witness protection, and dark secrets. Mrs. Puff runs the boating school in Bikini Bottom. She teaches SpongeBob and other fish how to drive boats. She seems like a normal teacher. She wears a sailor outfit and a hat. She inflates like a balloon when she gets scared or stressed. On the surface, there's nothing unusual about her. But one episode revealed something strange. Mrs. Puff has a secret past that she's running from. The theory is simple. Mrs. Puff isn't who she says she is. She changed her name and moved to Bikini Bottom to escape something from her previous life. She might be in witness protection or hiding from the law. Something bad happened at her old boating school, and she had to start over somewhere new. The evidence for this comes directly from the show, specifically one key episode and several others that add supporting details. Let's start with the most important evidence. Season 2, episode 20A, is called No Free Rides. This episode aired in February 2001. In this episode, SpongeBob has failed his boating test 38 times. Mrs. Puff is exhausted from teaching him. She's desperate for him to pass and leave her class. During one test, SpongeBob crashes again. Mrs. Puff realizes he'll never actually pass. She faces a choice. She can keep teaching SpongeBob forever, or she can just give him his license even though he didn't earn it. Mrs. Puff decides to cheat. She passes him anyway. SpongeBob is thrilled. He finally has his boating license. But then Mrs. Puff starts to panic. She imagines what will happen when SpongeBob drives on real roads. She pictures him causing accidents and destruction all over Bikini Bottom. Then Mrs. Puff says something very revealing. She says, "What have I done? I'll lose my job. I'll lose everything. I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school, with a new name. No, not again!" That last part is the key. No, not again. This tells us Mrs. Puff has done this before. She's already moved to a new city and started over with a new name at least once. This wasn't her first boating school. She isn't originally from Bikini Bottom. Mrs. Puff is whoever she claims to be. She's running from something in her past. The episode doesn't explain what happened before. It doesn't tell us why she had to move or what she did. But the line makes it clear this has happened at least once already. Mrs. Puff's reaction shows this isn't a small thing. She's genuinely terrified at the thought of having to do it again. Whatever forced her to move before was serious and traumatic. This one line from one episode is the foundation of the entire theory. Everything else builds from here. Fans started looking at other episodes differently after hearing this. They noticed that Mrs. Puff has an extensive criminal record. She's been arrested many times throughout the series. Usually it's because SpongeBob crashes during a driving test, and she gets blamed as his teacher. But the frequency of her arrests is unusual. In Season 2, Episode 30B, Doing Time, Mrs. Puff goes to jail because SpongeBob destroyed the city during a driving test. While in prison, she says she actually prefers being in jail to teaching SpongeBob. The guards and other prisoners are nicer to her than SpongeBob is. At one point in the episode, she says, "You can do this, Puff. You can get through this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again." This suggests Mrs. Puff has lost her sanity before. Something in her past pushed her to a mental breakdown. The phrasing, "not again," appears in her dialogue multiple times across different episodes. She's always worried about repeating something bad from her past. Let's look at what we actually know about Mrs. Puff's background. Her full name is Mrs. Penelope Puff. The Mrs. means she was married. In several episodes, characters mention Mr. Puff. In Season 1, Episode 5B, Ripped Pants, SpongeBob tells Mr. Krabs about Mr. Puff. He says that Mr. Puff was captured by humans and turned into a lamp. He adds that Mrs. Puff doesn't like to talk about it. This is confirmed information from the show. Mr. Puff is dead. He was killed by humans and made into a novelty lamp. This is a real thing that happens to pufferfish in the real world. People catch them, inflate them, and turn them into decorative lamps. So Mrs. Puff is a widow. She lost her husband in a traumatic way. This tragedy could explain why she had to move and start over. Maybe she lived somewhere else with her husband. After he was killed, she couldn't stay there anymore. The memories were too painful. Or maybe she was targeted by the same people who killed him. She had to flee and change her name to stay safe. Another possibility is that Mrs. Puff did something wrong at her previous boating school. Maybe she gave a license to a student who wasn't ready, just like she almost did with SpongeBob in No Free Rides. That student then caused a terrible accident. People died or were seriously hurt. Mrs. Puff was blamed. She lost her job, maybe even faced criminal charges. She had to move away and start fresh with a new identity. This would explain her reaction in No Free Rides. She's terrified of repeating the same mistake. If she gives SpongeBob his license and he causes destruction, she'll be in the exact same situation as before. She'll lose everything again. She'll have to run again. The trauma from the first time makes the idea unbearable. The show provides more evidence of Mrs. Puff's troubled relationship with the law. According to the SpongeBob SquarePants wiki, which compiles information from episodes, Mrs. Puff has the largest criminal record of any character in the series. She's been arrested at least 9 times throughout the show. Most of these arrests happen because of SpongeBob's driving accidents, but not all of them. In Season 1, Episode 8, a hall monitor, SpongeBob accidentally destroys the town while serving as hall monitor. Mrs. Puff is held responsible because she gave him the hall monitor position. She gets arrested even though she didn't actually do anything wrong. The police take her away in handcuffs. In the Doing Time episode, Mrs. Puff is sent to prison. She wears a prison uniform that's red instead of her normal blue outfit. She has a prisoner number. She's treated like a real criminal. During her time in jail, we see she knows how to handle herself in prison. She's not scared or confused. She acts like someone who understands how the system works. Maybe she's been in prison before, back when whatever happened at her previous school went wrong. Season 8, Episode 158B is called The Googly Artiste. In this episode, Patrick becomes an artist by gluing googly eyes on objects. Mrs. Puff appears briefly, but one scene shows a newspaper headline. The headline reads, "Deranged boat teacher makes getaway, distracts authorities with balloon animals." This is a reference to No Free Rides, where Mrs. Puff made balloon animals as a distraction. But the wording is interesting. Deranged suggests mental instability. Makes getaway suggests she's a fugitive. This newspaper might be from her past, reporting on whatever she's running from. Later seasons include episodes where Mrs. Puff acts in increasingly desperate ways. In Season 8, Episode 165, a Demolition Doofus, Mrs. Puff actually tries to kill SpongeBob. She gets injured during one of his crashes and can't puff up anymore. She's so angry and traumatized that she wants him dead. She signs him up for demolition derby competitions, hoping other drivers will destroy him. This is much darker than her usual character. The show portrays Mrs. Puff as someone barely holding it together. She takes medication for stress. She has anxiety attacks. She inflates uncontrollably when frightened. SpongeBob's constant failures push her closer to the edge every episode. The backstory of her having already lost everything once makes all of this hit harder. She's not just stressed about a bad student. She's reliving her worst trauma over and over. Some episodes show Mrs. Puff's past more directly. In Season 11, Episode 233, a Whale Watching, we see a photo in Mrs. Puff's house. The photo shows someone who doesn't appear to be anyone we know from the main cast. Fans have speculated this could be someone from her previous life, but the show doesn't explain who it is. What can we say for certain based only on what appears in episodes? Mrs. Puff has definitely lived somewhere else before Bikini Bottom. She definitely had to change her name and start a new boating school at least once. She says this directly in No Free Rides. She's terrified of having to do it again. She's mentioned multiple times that she's worried about losing her sanity again, suggesting a past mental breakdown. We know she's a widow. Her husband was killed in a horrible way. We know she has an extensive criminal record in Bikini Bottom, mostly because of SpongeBob. We know she's been to prison at least once. We know she sometimes acts desperate or even violent when pushed too far. We know she owns a boating school and has been teaching for some time, but we don't know how long or where she taught before. What we don't know is why she had to move originally. The show never explicitly explains this. We don't know if she was running from the law, running from criminals, running from her past mistakes, or just trying to escape painful memories. We don't know what Mrs. Puff is a fake name or her real name. We don't know if she's in any official witness protection program or if she's hiding on her own. The theory that Mrs. Puff is in witness protection or hiding from her past is well supported by that one key line, but the specific details of what happened are never revealed. The show leaves it mysterious on purpose. It's background character development that adds depth without requiring explanation. This mystery makes Mrs. Puff more interesting. She's not just a simple teacher character. She has a complicated past. She's trying to build a new life. She's haunted by mistakes or traumas we don't fully understand. SpongeBob unknowingly torments her by threatening to make her lose everything again. Every failed driving test brings her closer to having to flee and start over one more time. The beauty of this theory is that it's not really a theory at all. It's canon. Mrs. Puff says directly that she's had to move and change her name before. That's not speculation. It's text. The only theorizing is about why she had to do it and what exactly happened. But the fact that she has a secret past is confirmed by the show itself. This makes Mrs. Puff one of the most tragic characters in SpongeBob. Most characters are simple and straightforward. SpongeBob is optimistic and naive. Patrick is dumb but happy. Squidward is miserable but by choice. Mr. Krabs is greedy. Plankton is evil. But Mrs. Puff? She's a victim of circumstance, trying desperately to keep her new life from falling apart. She's genuinely suffering, and it's not even her fault. Every time SpongeBob shows up to her class, she knows there's a chance he'll destroy everything. One bad crash could end her career. She'd lose her school, her home, her reputation. She'd have to pack up and disappear again. She'd have to invent a new identity. She'd have to find a new town where nobody knows her. And she's already done this at least once. She knows exactly how painful that process is. The show occasionally hints that Mrs. Puff cares about SpongeBob despite everything. In some episodes, she acts almost like a mother figure to him. She wants him to succeed. But her trauma and fear make her react badly when he fails. She's torn between her duty as a teacher and her instinct for self-preservation. If she helps SpongeBob pass, she puts everyone in danger. If she fails him forever, she stays trapped in this cycle of stress and fear. What happened at her previous boating school? We'll probably never know. The show has been on the air since 1999 and hasn't revealed it yet. It seems like the writers want to keep it mysterious. It's more effective as an unknown. Our imagination fills in the blanks with possibilities that might be darker or more interesting than any explanation the show could provide. Was she framed for something she didn't do? Did a student she taught cause a horrible accident? Did she witness a crime and have to enter protection? Did her husband's death force her to flee? Did she lose her sanity after his death and do something she regrets? All of these are possible. None are confirmed. What we know for absolute certain is this. Mrs. Puff is not who she claims to be. She has a past she's running from. She's already changed her name and location at least once. She's terrified of having to do it again. She suffers from stress and anxiety related to this past. She has a criminal record and has been to prison. Her husband was killed in a traumatic way. And SpongeBob's presence in her life constantly threatens to destroy the new identity she's built. This is one of the darkest and most well-supported theories in SpongeBob. It's not based on reading too much into vague hints. It's based on direct dialogue from the show. Mrs. Puff herself tells us about her past, even if she doesn't explain the details. The evidence is right there and no free rides for anyone to see. Mrs. Puff's criminal past and secret identity theory stands as one of the most canon-supported fan theories in the entire show. Unlike theories that require speculation or interpretation, this one is built on explicit statements from the character herself. The mystery isn't whether she has a secret past. The mystery is what that past contains. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Patrick Star, the secret genius playing dumb. Patrick Star lives under a rock. He doesn't have a job. He spends his days eating, sleeping, and hanging out with SpongeBob. Everyone in Bikini Bottom considers him the dumbest character in town. He can barely count to 10. He forgets things immediately. He doesn't understand basic concepts. He once forgot how to eat. Patrick seems like the simplest, most straightforward character in the show. But some fans believe it's all an act. The theory suggests Patrick is actually intelligent. He pretends to be stupid so he doesn't have to work or take responsibility for anything. He's figured out how to live a comfortable, easy life by making everyone think he's too dumb to do anything useful. This theory is more controversial than others because it requires Patrick to be deceptive, which seems out of character, but there's evidence in the show that supports it. Let's start with the most famous piece of evidence. In Season 2, Episode 36, A Graveyard Shift, there's a scene where Sandy talks to Patrick. She asks him, "Don't you have to be stupid somewhere else?" Patrick looks at his wrist like he's checking a watch and responds, "Not until 4. This line is real. It's in the episode. You can watch it right now. The joke is that Patrick treats being stupid like it's a job with scheduled hours. He has to be stupid somewhere else at 4 o'clock, which implies that being dumb is something he does on purpose, on a schedule. This single line is the foundation of the entire theory. If being stupid is Patrick's job, who's paying him? The theory suggests he might be receiving some kind of welfare or disability payments. The show never explicitly shows this, but Patrick clearly gets money from somewhere. He buys food, he owns furniture, he pays for things in episodes where he goes shopping. He doesn't work, yet he survives. Something supports his lifestyle. Now let's look at Patrick's living situation. He lives under a rock. The rock is completely smooth and round on the outside, but when you lift it up, there's a full house underneath. Patrick has a bedroom, a living room, furniture, a TV, and other possessions. How did he get all this? How does he maintain it? For someone who's supposedly too dumb to function, he manages his household just fine. Patrick's intelligence varies wildly depending on the episode. This is important. Sometimes he can't tie his shoes. Other times he builds complex structures or solves difficult problems. The show plays this for comedy, but it also creates a pattern. Patrick seems to be smart when it benefits him, and dumb when being dumb is easier or more convenient. Let's look at specific examples. In Season 1, Episode 9, Nature Pants, SpongeBob decides to leave civilization and live with jellyfish. Patrick tries to convince him to stay. When SpongeBob refuses, Patrick gives a speech about friendship that's surprisingly articulate and emotionally intelligent. He understands what SpongeBob is giving up and expresses it clearly. Then in the very next episode, he might forget his own name. The inconsistency is striking. In Season 2, Episode 34B, Frankendoodle, SpongeBob, and Patrick find a magic pencil. Whatever they draw with it comes to life. Patrick immediately understands how the pencil works and uses it creatively. He draws complex shapes and demonstrates spatial reasoning. Yet in other episodes, he can't even draw a simple circle. Season 3, Episode 50B, Krusty Krab Training Video, shows the official Krusty Krab training procedures. At one point, the narrator says that Patrick is one of the Krusty Krab's customers. We see Patrick trying to order food. He can't decide what to order. He looks at the menu confused. When asked what he wants, he says, "I want to be a good person." This seems stupid, but is he actually confused, or is he messing with the cashier? The scene could be read either way. One of the most important episodes for this theory is Season 4, Episode 68, A Patrick Smartpants. This episode shows what happens when Patrick becomes intelligent. During a jellyfish chase, Patrick falls off a cliff and knocks off the top of his head. SpongeBob finds what he thinks is Patrick's head and screws it back on. But it's actually a piece of brain coral, not Patrick's real head. With the brain coral attached, Patrick becomes a genius. He speaks eloquently. He understands science and mathematics. He appreciates art and music. He reads books. He acts sophisticated and refined. But there's a catch. Smart Patrick is miserable. He can't relate to SpongeBob anymore. He doesn't enjoy simple fun. He's lonely because nobody in Bikini Bottom operates at his intellectual level. Eventually, Patrick realizes he was happier when he was dumb. He removes the brain coral and puts his real head back on. He goes back to being stupid. The episode ends with Patrick and SpongeBob making loud, obnoxious noises and running around acting silly. Patrick is clearly happier this way. This episode could support the theory in two ways. First, it shows Patrick knows what intelligence feels like and consciously chooses not to be intelligent. Second, it demonstrates that being smart made Patrick's life worse. If he figured this out in the past, he might have decided to act dumb deliberately. Being stupid is easier and more fun. Some episodes show Patrick being perceptive about things he shouldn't understand. In Season 3, Episode 42, a Club SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get lost in the wilderness. They find a magic conch shell that gives yes or no answers. SpongeBob and Patrick follow its advice completely. Squidward thinks it's ridiculous. Eventually, a ranger appears who also follows the magic conch. He helps them get home. Patrick and SpongeBob were right to trust it. Patrick understood something Squidward didn't. In Season 2, Episode 23, A Big Pink Loser, Patrick is jealous of SpongeBob's awards. He wants to win an award too. At the end of the episode, Patrick wins an award for doing absolutely nothing longer than anyone else. This is played as a joke, but it also reveals something. Patrick has mastered the art of doing nothing. That takes a certain kind of skill. Multiple episodes reference Patrick attending community college. In Season 5, Episode 82, The Great Patty Caper, Patrick mentions he went to community college. This is confirmed in other episodes too. If Patrick went to college, he must have some education. He learned something there, yet he acts like he doesn't know basic facts. Either he forgot everything, or he's hiding what he knows. There are scenes where Patrick seems to know more than he lets on. In Season 1, Episode 13b, Procrastination, SpongeBob procrastinates writing an essay. Patrick appears at his window late at night. He asks what SpongeBob is doing. SpongeBob says he's supposed to be writing an essay. Patrick says, "You're just using your essay as an excuse to not write it." Then he leaves. This line doesn't make sense if Patrick is genuinely stupid. It's actually a perceptive observation about procrastination. In Season 3, Episode 44b, The Bully, a new student named Flats threatens to kick SpongeBob's butt. SpongeBob is terrified and asks Patrick for help. Patrick gives surprisingly practical advice about standing up to bullies. His suggestions are reasonable and show understanding of social dynamics. Then moments later, he does something completely idiotic. The contrast is jarring. Some fans point to Season 5, Episode 92, The Battle of Bikini Bottom, as evidence. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick have a fight about cleanliness. Patrick takes the side of being dirty and gross, but his arguments are structured and logical. He defends his position articulately. He's not just being randomly gross. He's making conscious choices and justifying them with reasoning. What about Patrick's relationships? He's SpongeBob's best friend. SpongeBob is naive but hardworking and kind. Would SpongeBob stay friends with someone who's truly as stupid as Patrick acts? Or does SpongeBob see through the act? Maybe SpongeBob knows Patrick is smarter than he pretends but doesn't care because they have fun together. Patrick's relationship with Squidward is interesting too. Squidward hates both SpongeBob and Patrick. He considers them idiots who ruin his life. But Patrick sometimes says things to Squidward that seem calculated to annoy him. In Season 2, Episode 27, A Squid's Day Off, Patrick does things that specifically bother Squidward at the worst possible times. Coincidence? Or is Patrick smart enough to know exactly how to push Squidward's buttons? Let's consider what the theory actually claims. It says Patrick figured out that being smart is hard work. Being dumb is easy. If you act stupid enough, people don't expect anything from you. They don't ask you to work. They don't hold you responsible. They don't assign you difficult tasks. You can just exist, eating and sleeping and playing, with no obligations. This is an intelligent strategy. It requires understanding social systems and how to manipulate them. Patrick would need to consistently maintain his dumb persona. He'd need to know when to be stupid and how stupid to act in different situations. That takes planning and self-awareness. Those are signs of intelligence. But there's a major problem with this theory. Most of Patrick's stupidity genuinely hurts him. He gets injured, he gets in trouble, he suffers consequences. In Season 3, Episode 46A, Snowball Effect, Patrick builds a snow fort wrong and it collapses on him. In Season 1, Episode 3, a Jellyfishing, Patrick enthusiastically tries jellyfishing despite having no idea what he's doing. If Patrick were smart and faking, why would he let himself get hurt? The answer might be commitment to the act. If Patrick occasionally avoided obvious problems, people would realize he's smarter than he seems. He has to fully commit to the stupidity even when it hurts. Or maybe he's not faking all the time. Maybe he's legitimately not very bright, but he's smart enough to realize that leaning into it has advantages. He's not a genius pretending to be an idiot. He's kind of dumb, but he's aware enough to make it work for him. Another issue is that the show is a comedy. Patrick is stupid because stupid characters are funny. His intelligence fluctuates because the writers need him to be whatever works for each episode's joke. Reading too much into this inconsistency might be missing the point. The show isn't trying to reveal that Patrick is a secret genius, it's just making jokes. However, that "not until 4" line exists. The writers wrote it, the voice actor Bill Fagerbacke performed it, the animators animated it, it's in the show. Why include a line that directly suggests being stupid is Patrick's scheduled job? It could be a throwaway joke, or it could be the writers hinting at something deeper. What can we say for certain, based only on what appears in episodes? Patrick is portrayed as very unintelligent in most situations. He occasionally demonstrates surprising intelligence or insight. He doesn't have a visible job. He owns possessions and a home despite having no income source. He went to community college according to multiple episodes. He said being stupid somewhere else is something he does not until 4, treating it like scheduled work. When he became smart in Patrick's Smart Pants, he chose to go back to being dumb because he was happier that way. These are facts from the show. The interpretation is what's debatable. Does this mean Patrick is intentionally playing dumb? Maybe. Does it mean he's just a lazy character who happens to say funny things sometimes? Also maybe. The show never explicitly confirms either interpretation. The theory is interesting because it reframes Patrick's character. Instead of being a simple idiot, he becomes someone making conscious choices about how to live. He's opted out of society's expectations. He's found a way to be happy without working or trying hard. That's actually pretty smart, even if the method is deceptive. But the theory also makes Patrick less likable. If he's faking, then he's lying to his best friend. He's manipulating everyone around him. He's taking advantage of systems meant to help people who genuinely need assistance. That's not the Patrick we see in most episodes. Most episodes show Patrick as genuinely kind and loyal, even if he's dumb. He loves SpongeBob. He tries to help people. He means well even when he fails. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Patrick is legitimately not very intelligent by normal standards, but he's smart enough to realize that embracing his limitations is easier than fighting them. He's found contentment in simplicity. Whether that's a conscious strategy or just his natural state is unclear. The show leaves it ambiguous, probably on purpose. The secret genius theory remains one of SpongeBob's most debated ideas. It's based on real evidence from episodes, particularly that one line about being stupid somewhere else. But it requires reading subtext and connecting dots. The show doesn't explicitly connect. Unlike Mrs. Puff's criminal past, which she states directly, Patrick never admits to faking. We only have hints and inconsistencies to work with. For viewers who want to believe Patrick is smarter than he seems, there's enough evidence to support it. For viewers who think he's just a dumb character in a cartoon, there's plenty of evidence for that too. The theory exists in that gray area where both interpretations are valid, depending on how you watch the show. And maybe that's exactly where the writers want it to be. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Squidward's time travel paradox, the jellyfishing bootstrap loop. Time travel is confusing. When you change something in the past, it affects the future. But what happens if you go back in time and accidentally create the very thing that made you travel back in time in the first place? That's called a bootstrap paradox, or a causal loop. And SpongeBob SquarePants explored this concept in one of its strangest and most memorable episodes. Season 1, Episode 14A is called SB 129. This episode aired on the 31st of December, 1999, the last day of the 20th century. It's one of the most important episodes for understanding how time works in the SpongeBob universe. The episode follows Squidward as he accidentally travels to the future, then to the past, and eventually back to the present. Along the way, he creates a paradox that fans have been discussing for over 25 years. Let's walk through exactly what happens in the episode. It's a Sunday morning in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob's alarm clock goes off facing out his window. The loud ringing knocks Squidward's clarinet into his mouth while he's trying to practice. SpongeBob comes to Squidward's door holding a jellyfishing net. He asks Squidward if he wants to go jellyfishing. Squidward tries to say no, but the clarinet is stuck in his throat, so he can't speak clearly. SpongeBob thinks Squidward said yes. Patrick joins them. SpongeBob and Patrick are excited to go jellyfishing with Squidward. Squidward finally gets the clarinet out of his mouth and tells them no, but they don't listen. They keep bothering him. They peek through his windows. They knock on his door. They won't leave him alone. Squidward just wants peace and quiet so he can practice his clarinet. Desperate to escape, Squidward runs to the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob and Patrick follow him. Squidward hides inside the restaurant. It's Sunday, so the restaurant is closed. SpongeBob and Patrick look through the windows trying to find Squidward. Squidward hides in the walk-in freezer. He closes the door behind him and sits down, relieved to finally be alone. SpongeBob and Patrick eventually give up and leave. They decide to go to Jellyfish Fields without Squidward since they think he already went ahead. After they're gone, Squidward tries to open the freezer door. But it's stuck. The door handle won't turn. Squidward is locked inside. He's not worried though. He assumes someone will find him soon. He settles in to wait. But nobody comes. The freezer door has a window, and Squidward's face is visible through it, but somehow nobody notices him. Days pass, weeks pass, years pass. Squidward is frozen solid in a block of ice. The episode jumps forward 2,000 years to the year 4017. The Krusty Krab is still standing, but it looks different. Everything is covered in chrome, a silvery metallic coating. The freezer door finally falls off its hinges. A creature that looks like SpongeBob but with robotic features floats over. This is Spongetron, a descendant of SpongeBob from the future. Spongetron sees the frozen Squidward and uses a laser to melt the ice. Squidward wakes up, still finishing his sentence from 2,000 years ago. He says his last line about SpongeBob before realizing he's somewhere completely different. Squidward looks around and panics. Everything is chrome. The walls are chrome, the floor is chrome, even the plants outside are spray-painted chrome. Spongetron greets him and calls him primitive, which offends Squidward. Then, more SpongeBobs appear. These are Spongetron's clones. Spongetron explains he has 486 clones, one for each letter of the alphabet. This confuses Squidward because the alphabet doesn't have 486 letters. Spongetron says it does in the future. Squidward realizes he's in the future and freaks out. He doesn't want to be there. Spongetron tries to calm him down. When words don't work, Spongetron literally hits Squidward with a brick to knock some sense into him. Then Spongetron says he can help Squidward get back to his own time. There's a time machine in the Krusty Krab. Spongetron leads Squidward down a hallway and tells him the time machine is on the left. Squidward rushes through the door. We hear terrible mechanical sounds. Squidward walks out completely mangled, his body stretched and twisted like he went through a can opener. Spongetron apologizes and says, "That was actually the can opener room. The time machine is on the right." Squidward enters the correct room. Inside is a small space with striped wallpaper, a hanging lamp, and a control panel on the wall. The panel has a lever with two settings, future and past. There are also some buttons and a keyhole. Squidward examines the controls. He figures that if SpongeBob exists in the future, he needs to go to the past to escape him. He pulls the lever toward past. The time machine activates. Green flashing lights fill the room, and Squidward disappears. He travels through a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. When he emerges, he's no longer in the chrome future. He's in a completely different environment. Everything looks primitive. The ground is brown and rocky. There are no buildings, no roads, nothing civilized. Squidward steps out and looks around. He's relieved. He says, "Finally, no SpongeBob." He sits down and starts to play his clarinet. The music echoes across the barren landscape. For a moment, Squidward is happy. He has the peace and quiet he always wanted. But then two figures appear. They look like SpongeBob and Patrick, but different. They're more primitive, more animal-like. They have bigger teeth and move like cavemen. These are Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star, the prehistoric ancestors of SpongeBob and Patrick. They don't speak in words. They just grunt and make noises. Squidward is horrified. Even in prehistoric times, he can't escape SpongeBob and Patrick. The primitive versions approach him. They seem confused by Squidward and his clarinet. They don't understand what he is or what he's doing. Squidward tries to ignore them and keep playing his music, but they get closer and closer. The primitive creatures start to get aggressive. They don't like Squidward's clarinet music. They make angry sounds. Squidward realizes he's in danger. He tries to calm them down. He needs to distract them somehow. Then he remembers what SpongeBob and Patrick were trying to do in his own time. They wanted to go jellyfishing. Squidward looks around and sees jellyfish floating nearby. These are prehistoric jellyfish. They look similar to modern jellyfish, but more primitive. Squidward has an idea. He takes his clarinet and holds it like a net. He runs toward the jellyfish and catches one in the bell of his clarinet. He shows it to Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star. The two primitive creatures are amazed. They've never seen anyone catch a jellyfish before. They don't have nets or tools. They watch as Squidward demonstrates what he's doing. He's showing them how to catch jellyfish. He's teaching them jellyfishing. Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star get excited. They want to try it too. But Squidward quickly realizes he made a mistake. The primitive creatures become obsessed with catching jellyfish. They chase after them wildly. They're having fun, but they're also very aggressive about it. Squidward tries to get away from them. He runs back toward the time machine, but Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star follow him. They think it's all part of the game. Squidward reaches the time machine and jumps inside. The primitive creatures are right behind him, banging on the door. Squidward frantically tries to use the controls to escape. He pulls the lever back and forth, trying to get away, but he pulls too hard. The lever breaks off in his hand. The time machine starts malfunctioning. The control panel goes haywire. Instead of showing future and past, it turns into a slot machine display. The words spin like a slot machine and land on random settings. A voice says, "Loser," like a casino game. The time machine shakes and flashes. Outside, Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star continue hitting the machine. Inside, Squidward is thrown around as the machine goes out of control. The time machine takes off but doesn't go to any normal time period. Instead, Squidward travels through increasingly strange and abstract spaces. He sees random things flying by. Words appear in the void. Asparagus. Huh? Other bizarre images flash past. The journey becomes more chaotic and frightening. Finally, the time machine disappears completely. Squidward finds himself in a place unlike anywhere else. It's a completely white void. There's nothing there. No ground, no sky, no objects. Just endless white space in all directions. A few colored squares float in the air, but that's all. This place is called Nowhere. At first, Squidward is delighted. He says, alone. There's nobody here to bother him. No SpongeBob, no Patrick, no primitive ancestors. Just him and infinite emptiness. He finally has the complete isolation he's always wanted. But then something happens. When Squidward says, alone, the word appears in the air as text. And voices echo back at him, repeating the word alone over and over. The voices come from everywhere and nowhere. They surround Squidward. He starts to panic. He thought he wanted to be alone, but this is too much. The complete emptiness and the echoing voices terrify him. He runs frantically through the white void, but there's nowhere to go. Everything looks the same in all directions. He's trapped in nothingness. Squidward becomes desperate. He needs to get out. He needs to find the time machine, but it's gone. He can't see it anywhere. He runs and runs through the white space, calling for help. Then suddenly, he falls. He falls through what seems like a ceiling and lands inside the time machine. It was there the whole time, just invisible in the white void. Squidward doesn't care where the machine takes him anymore. He just wants to leave, nowhere. He begs the machine to take him home. The time machine activates on its own. Green flashes fill the room again. Squidward is transported one more time. When the light fades, he's back in the familiar Krusty Krab. He's in his own time period, the present day. Squidward opens the time machine door and stumbles out into the Krusty Krab. Everything is back to normal. No chrome future, no prehistoric wasteland, no white void. Just the regular old Krusty Krab. And there, waiting for him, are SpongeBob and Patrick. They're still holding their jellyfishing nets. They ask Squidward where he's been and if he wants to go jellyfishing now. Squidward looks at them. After everything he's been through, after traveling 2,000 years into the future and going back to prehistoric times, after being trapped in an endless white void, he's actually happy to see SpongeBob and Patrick. He hugs them. He tells them about his adventure. He explains that he went to the future, then to the past, and that he's the one who invented jellyfishing by showing it to their ancestors. SpongeBob and Patrick don't really understand what he's talking about. They just want to know if he'll come jellyfishing with them now. Squidward says yes. He's learned that being alone isn't what he really wants. He'd rather be annoyed by his neighbors than trapped in isolation. The episode ends with SpongeBob saying, "You mean you created jellyfishing?" and Squidward realizing what he's done. He says, "I'm going back," and reaches for the time machine door, implying he wants to go back in time and stop himself from teaching the primitive creatures. The episode cuts off there. Now let's talk about what this means. The episode creates what's called a bootstrap paradox or a causal loop. Here's how it works. In the present time, SpongeBob and Patrick love jellyfishing. They've been doing it their whole lives. It's their favorite activity. They learned it from someone, presumably their parents or other fish in Bikini Bottom. Those fish learned it from earlier generations, and so on, going back through history. But the episode shows us that jellyfishing didn't exist in prehistoric times. Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star had never seen anyone catch a jellyfish. They didn't have the concept of jellyfishing. Then Squidward arrives from the future and shows them how to do it. He demonstrates using his clarinet as a net. He teaches them the activity. Those primitive creatures presumably passed this knowledge to their descendants. Generation after generation learned jellyfishing. Eventually, thousands of years later, SpongeBob and Patrick are born into a world where jellyfishing already exists. They learn to jellyfish and become obsessed with it. They try to get Squidward to go jellyfishing with them. Squidward refuses and hides, which leads to him getting frozen and traveling through time, which leads to him teaching jellyfishing to the prehistoric creatures. The loop is complete. Jellyfishing exists because Squidward went back and taught it, but Squidward only went back because jellyfishing already existed in his present, and SpongeBob and Patrick annoyed him about it. So where did jellyfishing originally come from? The answer is nowhere. It has no origin point. It exists because of the time loop. This is a classic bootstrap paradox. The name comes from the phrase, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which is impossible. In a bootstrap paradox, something exists without ever being created. Information or objects travel in a loop through time with no beginning. It's called a paradox because it violates our normal understanding of cause and effect. Normally, every effect has a cause that came before it. If you plant a seed, it grows into a tree. The seed caused the tree. But in a bootstrap paradox, the effect causes itself. It's like if a tree dropped a seed that grew into the same tree that dropped the seed, with no first tree to start the cycle. The loop has no beginning or end. The episode never explicitly says this is what happened. The show doesn't have characters stop and explain, this is a bootstrap paradox. But that's what the story demonstrates. The writers created a time travel plot that follows the logic of this particular paradox. It's one of the most sophisticated story structures in the entire series. Why does this matter? Because it shows that SpongeBob SquarePants, a show primarily aimed at children, included a complex time travel concept that many science fiction stories explore. The bootstrap paradox appears in movies like Terminator, Predestination, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It appears in TV shows like Doctor Who and the fatally spetched Twilight Zone, and it appears in SB 129, wrapped in jokes about freezers and clarinet-playing octopuses. The episode also works on multiple levels. Young children watching it see a funny story about Squidward trying to escape SpongeBob and ending up in weird places. They laugh at the chrome future, the primitive creatures, and the scary white void. They don't need to understand the paradox to enjoy the episode. But older viewers or people watching it again as adults notice the time loop structure. They realize Squidward created the very thing he was trying to escape. They understand the implications. The episode rewards closer attention and repeat viewings. You catch things the second or third time that you missed initially. The bootstrap paradox in SB 129 is also interesting because Squidward doesn't realize what he's done until the very end. Throughout most of the episode, he's just trying to survive and get home. He teaches jellyfishing to the primitive creatures as a desperate distraction, not as an intentional act. He has no idea he's creating a future where jellyfishing exists. Only at the end, when SpongeBob points it out, does Squidward understand. "You mean you created jellyfishing?" SpongeBob asks. Squidward realizes the implications. Everything he tried to avoid was caused by his own actions. His attempt to escape SpongeBob and Patrick is what ensured SpongeBob and Patrick would exist as jellyfish-loving neighbors in the first place. This gives the episode a kind of tragic irony. Squidward can't escape his fate because his fate is a loop. He's trapped not just by SpongeBob and Patrick's annoying behavior, but by the structure of time itself. No matter what he does, he'll always end up in the same situation because the timeline has already been established by his future actions in the past. The episode also raises philosophical questions. If jellyfishing exists because of a time loop with no origin, can we say anyone truly invented it? Squidward taught it to the primitive creatures, but he only knew about it because it already existed in his present. He didn't create the concept from nothing. He just transmitted information that already existed. So is he the inventor, or is there no inventor because the loop has no beginning? These questions don't have clear answers. That's what makes paradoxes interesting. They create logical problems that can't be easily solved. The episode presents the paradox but doesn't try to explain it away or resolve it. It just lets it exist as part of the story. SB 129 is often ranked as one of the best episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants. It's creative, strange, funny, and surprisingly deep. The animation style changes dramatically across different sections. The chrome future looks completely different from the prehistoric past, which looks different from the white void. The episode takes risks and does things no other episode in the first season attempted. The bootstrap paradox is just one element that makes the episode memorable. There's also the existential horror of the nowhere sequence, the surreal comedy of the chrome future with 486 SpongeBobs, and the physical comedy of Squidward going through the can opener. But the time loop structure ties everything together and gives the episode lasting significance. What can we say for certain based on what happens in the episode? Squidward traveled 2,000 years into the future and met descendants of SpongeBob and Patrick. He used a time machine to travel to prehistoric times. In prehistoric times, jellyfishing did not exist yet. Primitive Sponge and Primitive Star did not know how to catch jellyfish. Squidward demonstrated catching a jellyfish using his clarinet. The primitive creatures learned from watching him. Squidward then returned to the present, where jellyfishing already exists as an established activity. The episode creates a causal loop where Squidward's actions in the past created the future that caused him to travel to the past. This is all shown directly in the episode. The bootstrap paradox interpretation is the natural conclusion from these events. The episode doesn't spell it out in words, but it demonstrates it through the plot structure. Squidward accidentally became the origin of the very thing that annoyed him enough to time travel in the first place. The time travel paradox in SB 129 remains one of the most clever and well-executed stories in SpongeBob SquarePants. It takes a complex science fiction concept and makes it accessible and funny. It shows that cartoons for children can include sophisticated storytelling without losing their sense of humor, and it proves that sometimes the things we try hardest to escape are the things we end up creating ourselves. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Gary the Snail, the Hidden Intellectual, and Royal Blood. Gary is SpongeBob's pet snail. He meows like a cat, he eats from a food bowl, he sleeps in a bed, he acts like a normal pet in almost every episode. SpongeBob treats him like a simple animal who needs to be fed and walked and cared for. But there's evidence throughout the series that Gary is much more than he appears. Gary might be one of the smartest characters in Bikini Bottom, and he's definitely royalty. Most of the time, Gary only says meow. That's his main form of communication. SpongeBob seems to understand what Gary's meows mean, but to everyone else, Gary just sounds like a cat. He doesn't talk in words. He doesn't explain his thoughts. He just meows and moves around like a pet. This makes it easy to assume Gary is just an animal with no real intelligence. But several episodes reveal that Gary is hiding something. He's far more intelligent than anyone realizes. He can read. He understands complex concepts. And in at least one episode, we see inside Gary's mind and discover he's actually brilliant. He chooses not to reveal his intelligence to anyone. He's content to let everyone think he's just a pet. The most important episode for understanding Gary's true intelligence is Season 1, Episode 15, called Sleepy Time. This episode aired in January 2000. In this episode, SpongeBob falls asleep and his dream self separates from his physical body. Dream SpongeBob can fly around and do whatever he wants. He decides to visit his friends' dreams to see what they're dreaming about. SpongeBob visits several dreams. He goes into Patrick's dream and sees Patrick riding a seahorse. He goes into Squidward's dream and sees Squidward performing clarinet music for an adoring audience. Each dream reflects what that character cares about. Then SpongeBob decides to visit Gary's dream. He flies to Gary's bed and enters his dream. What SpongeBob finds is shocking. Gary's dream takes place in a massive library. There are tall bookshelves everywhere, filled with thousands of books. The library is elegant and sophisticated. And there, in the middle of this library, is Gary. But Gary looks different. He has a humanoid body, he's wearing glasses, he's sitting in a chair reading a book. Then Gary speaks. Not in meows, but in actual words with a sophisticated vocabulary. His voice is deep and cultured. He sounds like an educated professor or philosopher. Gary looks up from his book and sees SpongeBob. He's not happy about the interruption. SpongeBob is surprised. He says, "Gary, you can talk?" Gary responds with a question that's become famous among fans. He says, "Did you think my shell was full of hot air?" This line is crucial. It tells us several things. First, Gary is fully self-aware. He knows what others think about him. Second, he's intelligent enough to form complete sentences and use sarcasm. Third, he's been hiding this intelligence the whole time. The phrase, "Did you think my shell was full of hot air?" implies that Gary has a brain and thoughts just like anyone else, but people assume he's empty-headed because he's a snail. Gary continues speaking in the dream. He talks to SpongeBob about dream theory and philosophy. He's reading advanced books. He discusses complex topics. He acts like a scholar or academic. This is Gary's true self, revealed in the privacy of his own dreams. When he's alone in his own mind, Gary is sophisticated and intellectual. SpongeBob is amazed but also doesn't fully understand what he's seeing. He treats Gary's dream library like a playground and starts causing chaos. Gary becomes annoyed. He scolds SpongeBob for disrupting his peaceful reading time. Gary clearly values knowledge and quiet contemplation. He's not interested in childish games. He wants to read his books in peace. The episode establishes something important. Gary's intelligence is real. This isn't a joke or a one-time gag. The show is revealing Gary's true nature. He's been intelligent all along. He just doesn't show it when he's awake. Or maybe he shows it in subtle ways that SpongeBob doesn't notice. After Sleepy Time aired, viewers started paying more attention to Gary. They noticed things they'd missed before. In multiple episodes, Gary is shown reading books. In Season 2, Episode 23, B, Gary takes a bath. Gary is seen reading a book called Snail Jokes. This confirms Gary can read. He's not just looking at pictures. He's actually reading text and understanding it. In Season 3, Episode 43B, Rockabye Bivalve, Gary is shown reading a newspaper. Throughout the series, Gary demonstrates abilities that normal pets don't have. Several episodes show Gary understanding situations and solving problems in ways that suggest intelligence beyond a normal pet. He makes decisions. He shows judgment. He reacts to events with what seems like comprehension rather than just instinct. While the show usually plays these moments for comedy, they consistently suggest Gary is more aware than he appears. But Gary's intelligence is only half the story. Gary also has royal blood. This is revealed in Season 4, Episode 65, called Rule of Dumb. This episode aired in March 2005. The episode starts with Patrick finding a document under his rock. The document says Patrick is the rightful heir to the throne of Bikini Bottom. He's royalty. His family comes from a royal lineage. King Neptune's royal ministers arrive. They bring a family tree that proves Patrick's claim. The family tree is shown on screen. It's a large diagram showing how Patrick's ancestors connect to the royal family. The tree traces back many generations, and there, on the family tree, is Gary's name. The family tree shows that Patrick and Gary are cousins. Their fathers were brothers. Patrick's father was Herb Star. Gary's father was Sluggo. Herb Star and Sluggo were siblings, which makes Patrick and Gary first cousins. Since Patrick is royalty and Gary is Patrick's cousin, that means Gary also has royal blood. This revelation is presented as fact in the episode. It's not a joke or a dream sequence. The royal ministers have official documents. The family tree is legitimate. Gary is genuinely part of the royal family. He's in the line of succession to the throne of Bikini Bottom. He just never mentioned it to anyone. Think about what this means. Gary has known his whole life that he's royalty. He's never told SpongeBob. He's never acted entitled or demanded special treatment. He's lived quietly as a pet snail, content with his simple life. He could have claimed his royal status at any time. He could have lived in a palace, but he chose to stay with SpongeBob in a pineapple house. This fits perfectly with what we learned in Sleepy Time. Gary is intelligent enough to understand his royal heritage. He's sophisticated enough to appreciate a quiet life of reading and contemplation. He doesn't need wealth or power or recognition. He's happy being underestimated. He's chosen simplicity over grandeur. The combination of high intelligence and royal blood makes Gary one of the most interesting characters in the show. He's possibly the smartest and most well-connected character, but he hides it completely. He lets everyone treat him like a simple pet. He meows instead of speaking. He sleeps in a pet bed instead of a royal chamber. He eats from a food bowl instead of dining at fancy restaurants. Why would Gary do this? Several possible explanations exist. First, Gary might value freedom over responsibility. Being royalty comes with duties and expectations. As Patrick discovers in Rule of Dumb, being king is stressful. You have to make decisions. People demand things from you. You lose your privacy. Gary probably knows all this and wants no part of it. Living as a pet snail means nobody expects anything from him. Second, Gary might genuinely love SpongeBob and want to stay with him. Throughout the series, Gary and SpongeBob have a close bond. In Season 4, Episode 63, Have You Seen This Snail? Gary runs away when SpongeBob forgets to feed him for 10 days. But Gary comes back because he realizes SpongeBob really cares about him. Their relationship is real. Gary chose SpongeBob as his owner, and he continues choosing to stay. Third, Gary might prefer observing life rather than participating in it. His dream library suggests he values knowledge and learning. Living as a simple pet lets him watch everything without being involved. He can observe SpongeBob's adventures, learn from them, and remain detached. He's like a philosopher who studies life from the sidelines. Other episodes support the idea that Gary is highly intelligent. In Season 3, Episode 56B, I Had an Accident, Gary shows practical wisdom. When SpongeBob refuses to go outside after an accident, Gary tries to convince him with logic. Gary understands psychology and knows how to communicate ideas even without words. The show occasionally acknowledges Gary's intelligence directly. In Season 11, Episode 233, A Chatterbox Gary, Gary gets a collar that translates his meows into words. With the collar, Gary speaks in complete sentences with an extensive vocabulary. He sounds educated and articulate. The collar doesn't change Gary's intelligence. It just reveals what was always there. Gary was always this smart. He just couldn't express it in words before. Even without the collar, Gary communicates clearly. SpongeBob usually understands what Gary wants. When Gary meows, SpongeBob knows if Gary is hungry, bored, worried, or trying to warn him about something. This suggests Gary's meows aren't random. He's actually communicating specific information. SpongeBob has learned to understand Gary's language. The royal blood revelation adds another layer to Gary's character. He comes from nobility. His ancestors ruled Bikini Bottom. He has connections to King Neptune and the highest levels of ocean society. But he's rejected all of that to live a quiet life. This shows wisdom and self-knowledge. Gary knows what makes him happy, and it's not power or status. In Rule of Dumb, when Patrick becomes king, he becomes corrupt and cruel. Power changes him for the worse. He demands tributes. He treats his friends badly. He lets authority go to his head. Gary has avoided this trap by never claiming his royal status. He's seen what royalty does to people and wants no part of it. Gary's lineage also explains some of his refined tastes. In various episodes, Gary is shown to appreciate quality. He has preferences, he makes choices. These could be traits he inherited from his royal ancestors. Even living as a pet, Gary maintains certain standards. The show never fully explains why Gary chooses to hide his intelligence and royal status. It's left ambiguous. But the evidence is clear. Gary is smart, educated, sophisticated, and royal. He could claim any life he wanted. He could speak in words if he had a translation device. He could demand recognition. Instead, he meows and sleeps and eats snail food and stays with SpongeBob. This makes Gary possibly the wisest character in the entire show. He's figured out what truly matters. Intelligence doesn't require showing off. Royal blood doesn't require living in a palace. Happiness comes from simple pleasures, loyal friendships, and peaceful contemplation. Gary embodies contentment in a way no other character does. What can we say for certain based on episodes? Gary's dream in Sleepy Time shows him as highly intelligent, living in a library, speaking eloquently, and reading advanced books. Gary directly asks if SpongeBob thought his shell was full of hot air, confirming he has sophisticated thoughts. The family tree in Rule of Dumb officially shows Gary as Patrick's cousin and part of the royal family. Gary can read, as shown in multiple episodes where he's reading books or newspapers. Gary understands complex situations and communicates effectively, even though he only meows. In Chatterbox Gary, when given a translation collar, Gary speaks with an extensive vocabulary and articulate manner. These are facts from the show. They're not theories or speculation. The show explicitly confirms Gary's intelligence and royal blood through Sleepy Time and Rule of Dumb. What remains mysterious is why Gary hides these things. The show doesn't answer this directly, but the character of Gary becomes much richer when you understand what he's hiding. Gary the Snail is a hidden intellectual and secret royal who has chosen the life of a pet. He's possibly the smartest character in Bikini Bottom, definitely connected to royalty, and completely content to let everyone underestimate him. He lives with SpongeBob, not because he has to, but because he wants to, and that might be the most intelligent decision of all. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have SpongeBob's parents. Why they're really so supportive. SpongeBob SquarePants lives in a pineapple under the sea. He works as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab for minimum wage. Yet somehow, he owns a fully furnished house in a decent neighborhood right next to Squidward tentacles. And here we need to talk about something that many viewers have noticed but never really questioned. How does SpongeBob afford his house? And why does Squidward, who openly hates SpongeBob, continue to live next door to him year after year when he could easily move? The answer might be more calculated than you think. There exists a theory that completely changes how we view the relationship between these characters, and once you hear it, you cannot unsee it. SpongeBob's parents are secretly wealthy, and they hired Squidward to watch over their hyperactive son. Let's start with the foundation of this theory, which comes from examining what we actually know about Harold and Margaret SquarePants from the show itself. They appear in multiple episodes throughout the series, and every single appearance reveals small details that paint a very different picture than what we initially assume. In Home Sweet Pineapple, we meet them for the first time when they arrive to pick up SpongeBob after nematodes eat his house. They pull up in a nice boat, they're well-dressed, and they live somewhere outside Bikini Bottom. Harold explicitly says goodbye to Bikini Bottom when leaving, which confirms they don't live there. They live elsewhere, somewhere nicer. In later episodes, we discover they live in a retirement community called Avocondo Acres. Retirement communities are expensive. They require significant savings and stable income to afford. This tells us Harold and Margaret have money. The show gives us even more evidence in No Free Rides. In this episode, SpongeBob's parents buy him a boatmobile as a gift for supposedly passing his driving test. They just buy him a car. On a whim. Because they're proud of him. Mrs. Puff tries to explain that SpongeBob didn't actually pass, but Harold and Margaret don't care. They hand over the keys to an expensive vehicle like it means nothing to them. This kind of casual spending indicates wealth. Average middle-class parents don't randomly purchase cars for their adult children without a second thought. In Blackjack, we see their actual house. The house is a 2-story golden home with multiple rooms, nice furniture, and a well-maintained lawn. The house resembles SpongeBob's pineapple in architectural style, which suggests they bought SpongeBob a home that reminds him of his childhood. Rich parents do this. They want their children to feel comfortable and familiar, even when living independently. Throughout the series, Harold and Margaret are shown traveling, going on vacations, and living a comfortable retirement lifestyle. In Ma and Pa's Big Hurrah, they're revealed to be thrill seekers who sneak out to go to wrestling matches and roller rinks. They have the free time and disposable income to pursue leisure activities constantly. They're clearly not worried about money. They're not working anymore. They're living off substantial savings or investments. Now let's talk about SpongeBob himself, and why his parents would worry about him. The show consistently portrays SpongeBob as someone who displays clear characteristics of ADHD. He's hyperactive, he's impulsive, he has an extremely short attention span unless he's engaged in something he loves like cooking or jellyfish hunting. In most episodes, SpongeBob is rarely still. He bounces around, he talks excessively, he annoys other characters with his constant chatter and inability to read social cues. In Procrastination, we see him get distracted by literally everything instead of writing an essay. He waters his shell collection. He reorganizes his sock drawer. He does everything except the task he's supposed to complete. In multiple episodes, SpongeBob makes impulsive decisions without thinking about consequences. He adopts a scallop with Patrick without considering the responsibility. He joins the jellyfish because they seem fun. He follows Sandy into extreme sports because it looks exciting. SpongeBob's behavior is endearing to viewers, but imagine being his parent. Harold and Margaret love their son deeply. Every episode featuring them shows they're supportive and caring. But they also understand his limitations. They recognize he needs help navigating the world. They worry about him. Here's where Squidward enters the picture, and everything starts making sense. Squidward Tentacles is SpongeBob's co-worker at the Krusty Krab and his next-door neighbor. The show establishes that Squidward hates living next to SpongeBob. He complains constantly. SpongeBob bothers him every single day. SpongeBob interrupts his clarinet practice, ruins his gardening, and invades his personal space. Squidward dreams of living in a fancy neighborhood with other sophisticated octopi who appreciate art and culture. In Squidville, he gets exactly that and moves to Tentacle Acres, a community of identical octopi who love clarinet music and interpretive dance. Yet Squidward moves back to Bikini Bottom. He returns to live next door to SpongeBob despite having the perfect opportunity to escape. In every other episode, Squidward stays in his Easter Island head house right next to SpongeBob's pineapple. He never seriously attempts to move again. He never quits his job at the Krusty Krab, even though he hates it. He never relocates to a different neighborhood. Why? Because Squidward can't afford to move. Or, more accurately, Squidward is contractually obligated not to move. Let's examine Squidward's financial situation and backstory. Squidward works as a cashier at the Krusty Krab for presumably minimum wage. Mr. Krabs is notoriously cheap and pays his employees almost nothing. Squidward is a failed artist with dreams of being a famous clarinet player, dancer, or painter. None of these dreams have materialized. In Band Geeks and other episodes, we learn that Squidward has a wealthy rival named Squilliam Fancison. Squilliam and Squidward attended high school together, where they competed in band class. Squilliam succeeded in everything Squidward dreamed about. Squilliam owns a private yacht, a private island, a 4-story mansion with golden toilets and jewel-encrusted toilet paper racks, a successful band, and multiple businesses. Squilliam represents everything Squidward wanted to achieve. The show implies that Squidward once moved in wealthier circles. He knows Squilliam. He attended the same school and classes. He was part of that social scene, but somewhere along the way, Squidward fell from grace. His clarinet performances are terrible. His art is unappreciated. His dance recitals are disasters. Squidward's dreams of fame and fortune crumbled, leaving him stuck in a dead-end job in a modest neighborhood. He went from aspiring artist to cashier at a fast food restaurant. This is where Harold and Margaret Squarepants come in with their master plan. They know Squidward from his past life when he still circulated in wealthier social circles. Maybe Harold had business connections with Squidward's family. Maybe Margaret met Squidward at cultural events where he performed. The exact connection doesn't matter. What matters is that Harold and Margaret knew Squidward when he had money and status. They watched him fall on hard times. When SpongeBob decided he wanted to move out and live independently, Harold and Margaret supported his decision. They believe in their son's independence, but they also worry about him constantly. SpongeBob's ADHD characteristics mean he struggles with organization, time management, and reading social situations. He makes impulsive decisions. He gets easily distracted. He's vulnerable to taking advantage of because he trusts everyone immediately. Harold and Margaret needed someone to watch over SpongeBob without SpongeBob knowing he was being watched. They needed a guardian who could live nearby and keep tabs on their son while allowing SpongeBob to feel independent, so they approached Squidward with an offer he couldn't refuse. They gave Squidward a loan to purchase the house next to SpongeBob's pineapple. In return, Squidward agreed to watch over SpongeBob and report back to them about any problems. Squidward gets financial assistance and a place to live. Harold and Margaret get peace of mind knowing someone is watching their son. SpongeBob gets to feel like an independent adult living on his own. This theory explains so many things that otherwise don't make sense in the show. First, it explains how SpongeBob owns his pineapple house outright while working minimum wage. He didn't buy it himself. His parents bought it for him. The pineapple is fully furnished with a library, multiple rooms, kitchen, living room, and all the amenities. Harold and Margaret purchased everything and set SpongeBob up in a home he could maintain. They probably even pay his bills or gave him a trust fund that covers his living expenses. SpongeBob never worries about rent or mortgages. He never stresses about money, except when it relates to his job performance. The financial security allows SpongeBob to work at the Krusty Krab because he loves cooking, not because he needs the paycheck desperately. Second, this theory explains why Squidward never moves despite having countless opportunities and motivations to leave. Squidward is stuck. He made an agreement with Harold and Margaret. The loan they gave him came with conditions. He must live next door to SpongeBob. He must work at the same restaurant. He must keep an eye on SpongeBob and make sure he's safe. Squidward can't break this agreement without facing financial consequences. The loan probably has terms that require him to maintain proximity to SpongeBob or else pay back the full amount immediately. Squidward doesn't have that kind of money. He's trapped by his own financial desperation. Third, this explains why SpongeBob's parents live in Avocado Acres, a retirement community that's modest by wealthy standards. Harold and Margaret could afford a mansion like Squilliam's. They have the money, but they chose a more modest retirement home instead. Why? Because they're spending their money on other things. They're paying for SpongeBob's house. They're paying Squidward's salary or loan payments. They're funding their son's lifestyle and protection. They live modestly so they can spend lavishly on ensuring SpongeBob's safety and happiness. They're willing to sacrifice their own comfort because they love their son that much. Fourth, this explains Squidward's behavior towards SpongeBob throughout the series. Squidward is mean to SpongeBob constantly. He yells at him, he insults him, he tries to avoid him. But Squidward never actually abandons SpongeBob or lets truly terrible things happen to him. In episodes where SpongeBob faces real danger, Squidward intervenes or shows concern. When SpongeBob is genuinely upset or hurt, Squidward drops his usual hostility and helps. Squidward is fulfilling his obligation to Harold and Margaret. He's watching over SpongeBob even though he resents having to do it. His constant irritation comes from being forced into this arrangement against his will, but his underlying actions show he's keeping his promise to protect SpongeBob. The evidence from episodes supports this theory repeatedly. In Pizza Delivery, Squidward and SpongeBob get lost delivering a pizza. SpongeBob starts crying because they failed their mission. Squidward, despite complaining the entire time, goes out of his way to comfort SpongeBob and confronts the rude customer who made SpongeBob upset. This goes beyond coworker obligation. Squidward is acting as a guardian. In Dying for Pie, Squidward believes SpongeBob will die from eating an explosive pie. Squidward spends the entire day making sure SpongeBob has the best final day of his life. He does things he hates because he wants SpongeBob to be happy. A person who genuinely didn't care wouldn't go to such lengths. Squidward cares because he's supposed to care. He's obligated to care. In Fools in April, Squidward plays a cruel prank on SpongeBob that goes too far. SpongeBob gets hurt and runs home crying. Squidward immediately feels terrible. He spends the rest of the episode trying to apologize because he genuinely feels guilty about hurting SpongeBob. The guilt feels more intense than it should for a simple coworker relationship. But if Squidward has been hired to protect SpongeBob, then harming SpongeBob would feel like a professional failure on top of a personal one. The theory also explains why Harold and Margaret visit SpongeBob's workplace multiple times throughout the series. They're not just supportive parents checking in on their son. They're checking in on their investment and making sure Squidward is holding up his end of the bargain. In New Digs, Margaret even showers at the Krusty Krab when SpongeBob temporarily lives there. They're incredibly involved in SpongeBob's daily life for parents whose adult son supposedly lives independently. This level of involvement suggests they're monitoring the situation closely. They want to make sure everything is going according to plan. The financial aspect makes even more sense when you consider the broader context of SpongeBob's life. Gary the snail is SpongeBob's pet. Gary is revealed to be royal in Rule of Dumb as Patrick's cousin. SpongeBob owns a purebred royal snail. Those are expensive. SpongeBob also has an extensive toy and hobby collection. He owns karate gear for his matches with Sandy. He has jellyfishing nets. He has bubble-blowing equipment. He owns countless items that require disposable income. SpongeBob lives like someone who doesn't worry about money because someone else is covering his expenses. Some people argue against this theory by pointing out that it makes Harold and Margaret seem manipulative or controlling. They love SpongeBob, so why would they deceive him about having a secret guardian? But the theory actually shows how much they love him. Harold and Margaret recognize that SpongeBob needs help, but they also respect his desire for independence. They found a solution that gives SpongeBob freedom while providing safety. They're not controlling him, they're supporting him in a way that lets him grow and live his own life. SpongeBob doesn't know about the arrangement because telling him would hurt his feelings and make him feel incapable. Harold and Margaret are protecting both his physical safety and his emotional well-being. Others argue that Squidward is too mean to be a hired guardian, but that's actually part of what makes him effective. If Squidward acted overly friendly and protective, SpongeBob would become suspicious. SpongeBob is naive, but he's not stupid. He would notice if Squidward suddenly started being nice to him all the time. By maintaining his grumpy, irritated persona, Squidward deflects suspicion. SpongeBob never questions why Squidward stays because Squidward acts like he hates being there. The cover is perfect. Nobody, including SpongeBob, realizes Squidward is actually being paid to stay. This theory transforms the entire dynamic of Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob represents the sheltered rich kid who doesn't realize he's sheltered. His optimism and cheerfulness come partly from never experiencing true hardship because his parents cushioned him from it. Squidward represents the fallen artist forced to sell out his dreams to survive. His bitterness comes from knowing he's trapped in a situation he can't escape without losing everything. Mr. Krabs unknowingly benefits from having two employees who won't quit no matter how badly he treats them. SpongeBob won't quit because he loves cooking. Squidward can't quit because he needs to maintain his proximity to SpongeBob. Patrick exists as SpongeBob's actual friend, completely unaware of the financial arrangement underpinning everything around them. The theory doesn't contradict any established canon. Instead, it provides explanations for questions that the show never directly addresses. It adds depth to character motivations and relationships. It makes the world of SpongeBob more realistic by introducing economic considerations that the show usually ignores for comedic effect. The most beautiful part of this theory is how it reframes Squidward's character. Yes, Squidward is mean. Yes, he's selfish and pretentious. But underneath all that, he's a man who kept his word. He made an agreement to watch over SpongeBob, and despite complaining every single day, he never breaks that promise. He stays next door. He works at the Krusty Krab. He makes sure SpongeBob stays safe. Squidward might hate his circumstances, but he honors his commitments. That makes him more honorable than he appears. And Harold and Margaret SquarePants become even better parents when viewed through this lens. They did everything possible to give their son independence while keeping him safe. They didn't smother him or force him to live with them. They didn't constantly hover or micromanage his life directly. They set up a system that allows SpongeBob to thrive while having a safety net he doesn't even know exists. They sacrificed their own potential luxury to fund his happiness. That's love expressed through actions rather than words. SpongeBob SquarePants works as a fry cook. He owns a house. Squidward lives next door. And behind it all, two loving parents pulled strings to make sure their hyperactive son could live his best life while staying safe. That's the real story of Bikini Bottom. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. The post-movie timeline split, two different SpongeBobs. SpongeBob SquarePants died in 2004. He dried out under a heat lamp in Shell City, turned into a lifeless kitchen sponge, and stopped breathing. The movie showed his death on screen. Thousands of children cried in theaters across the country, and then SpongeBob came back to life through the power of tears, activating a sprinkler system. But here, we need to address something that fans have noticed for 20 years. The SpongeBob who came back was not the same SpongeBob who died. The personality changed. The intelligence dropped. The entire tone of the show shifted, and there exists a biological explanation that makes perfect sense when you understand how sea sponges actually reproduce. SpongeBob died in that gift shop. The creature who returned to Bikini Bottom was his offspring, created through asexual reproduction, a clone, a child. And once you understand this theory, you cannot watch the show the same way ever again. Let's establish what actually happened in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie before we explain how it created two different timelines. The film was released in November 2004 and was intended by creator Steven Hillenburg to be the series finale. He planned to end the show after 3 seasons with this movie serving as the conclusion to SpongeBob's story. The plot follows SpongeBob and Patrick traveling to Shell City to retrieve King Neptune's stolen crown and save Mr. Krabs from execution. Shell City is a gift shop on land, where sea creatures are dried out and sold as novelty items. Nobody who ventures to Shell City ever returns. The entire ocean fears this place. SpongeBob and Patrick make it there anyway. They find the crown, but then the Cyclops, who owns the shop, captures them. He places SpongeBob and Patrick under an intense heat lamp to dry them out completely. The drying process is shown in graphic detail for a children's movie. SpongeBob and Patrick transform from cartoon characters into photorealistic dried-out versions of themselves. A real kitchen sponge. A real dried starfish. They cannot move. They cannot breathe. They are dying. SpongeBob gives a heartbreaking monologue about how they were just kids and over their heads. Patrick weakly says the word Shell City multiple times until SpongeBob realizes they actually made it to their destination. They succeeded in their mission even though they're about to die. SpongeBob says they did all right for a couple of goofballs. Then, as their final act, they sing the Goofy Goober song one last time. A slow, sad, dying reprise. They sing it together as they shrivel up completely, their eyes close, the screen fades, they are dead. This death scene traumatized an entire generation of children. Kids cried uncontrollably in theaters. Parents had to comfort sobbing children. The scene was emotionally devastating because SpongeBob had become a cultural icon. He was as beloved as Mickey Mouse or Bugs Bunny. Watching him die felt like losing a real friend. The movie let audiences sit with that death for several seconds before showing the resolution. Tears fall from SpongeBob and Patrick's dried-out bodies. The tears short-circuit the heat lamp. The lamp explodes. The fire sprinkler system activates. Water rains down on every dried creature in the gift shop. SpongeBob and Patrick absorb the water and come back to life. They're resurrected. All the other dried sea creatures also come back to life. Everyone attacks the Cyclops while SpongeBob and Patrick escape with the crown. They return to Bikini Bottom as heroes. SpongeBob uses the power of rock music to free everyone from Plankton's mind control. Mr. Krabs promotes SpongeBob to manager of the Krusty Krab 2. Happy ending, the perfect conclusion to the series. Except the series didn't end. Nickelodeon ordered more episodes. Season 4 began production. And that's where everything changed. Season 4 premiered in 2005, 1 year after the movie. Immediately, longtime fans noticed something was different. SpongeBob's personality had shifted dramatically. In seasons 1 through 3, SpongeBob was childish but competent. He was naive but not stupid. He had genuine skills. He was the best fry cook at the Krusty Krab. He could drive a rock. He understood complex concepts. He had emotional depth. He experienced real adult problems like workplace disappointment and friendship conflicts. He was relatable. He was lovable because underneath his enthusiasm was a genuine person trying his best. Season 4 SpongeBob was different. He became dumber, significantly dumber. His actions became more reckless and dangerous. His voice got higher and shriller. He cried more often and for longer periods. He laughed in a more manic way. His facial expressions became exaggerated to the point of looking mentally unstable. His treatment of Squidward crossed from annoying neighbor to stalker-level obsessive. He needed basic concepts explained to him constantly. Any trace of his adulthood vanished. He acted like a toddler in an adult's body. The change was so dramatic that fans created a term for it: flanderization. The process where a character's traits get exaggerated to the point of becoming a caricature of themselves. The flanderization got worse in seasons 5, 6, and 7. SpongeBob's intelligence dropped to levels that made him one of the dumbest cartoon characters on television. His cheerfulness became mania. His innocence became absurd stupidity. Episodes focused more on gross-out humor and physical slapstick rather than the clever wit and heart that defined the early seasons. The other characters flanderized too. Patrick went from lovable idiot to dangerously moronic. Squidward went from grumpy neighbor to miserable punching bag. Mr. Krabs went from cheap to criminally greedy. The entire tone of the show transformed. Fans who grew up with the original 3 seasons felt betrayed. The show they loved was gone. Something else had taken its place wearing SpongeBob's face. And this is where the death theory provides an explanation that makes sense both narratively and scientifically. Sea sponges reproduce asexually through a process called budding. A piece of the parent sponge breaks off and grows into a genetically identical copy. It's essentially cloning. The offspring is a separate individual but contains all the genetic information of the parent. Now apply this to SpongeBob's death scene. SpongeBob died under the heat lamp. His body dried out completely. But he's a sea sponge. Sea sponges have remarkable regenerative abilities. When exposed to water after drying out, they can regenerate. But what if the regeneration didn't fully restore the original SpongeBob? What if the trauma of complete desiccation triggered asexual reproduction instead? What if the creature that came back was technically SpongeBob's offspring, a clone created in that moment of death and rebirth? This would explain everything. The offspring would have SpongeBob's memories because it came from his cells. It would have his personality traits, but in a more primitive, undeveloped form. It would be younger mentally, even though it looks the same age physically. It would be less mature because it literally is a child. Steven Hillenburg himself provided evidence that supports this theory, though perhaps not intentionally. After the movie, Hillenburg stated that all episodes from Season 4 onward are prequels to the first 3 seasons and the movie. He said the show would never reference what happened after the movie events. The series would never mention SpongeBob being manager of the Krusty Krab 2. Everything post-movie takes place earlier in the timeline. This was the official explanation for why SpongeBob seemed different and why the show ignored the movie's ending. The show was exploring SpongeBob's younger years. A younger, more immature SpongeBob makes sense as a prequel explanation, but the death theory works alongside this explanation. Both can be true simultaneously. SpongeBob died in the movie. The episodes after the movie are prequels showing us the life of a younger SpongeBob. That younger SpongeBob is actually the clone offspring who replaced the original. The original SpongeBob, who we followed through seasons 1 to 3 and the movie, is gone. He died in Shell City. The SpongeBob in season 4 and beyond is his child, living out a version of his father's life. The evidence supporting 2 different SpongeBobs is overwhelming when you examine the show closely. The original SpongeBob had skills and competence. He could drive vehicles when needed, like in the movie when he and Patrick drove the paddy wagon across the ocean. Season 4, SpongeBob completely loses all driving ability. He cannot drive at all. He's shown as dangerously incompetent behind any steering wheel. The original SpongeBob understood his job and took pride in his work. He had techniques. He had standards. Season 4, SpongeBob is just enthusiastic without the underlying skill. The original SpongeBob had emotional intelligence. He could read situations and adjust his behavior accordingly. He comforted Squidward in pizza delivery when a customer was rude. He stood up for his friends when they needed him. Season 4, SpongeBob has no emotional intelligence. He cannot read social cues. He pushes boundaries without understanding he's causing harm. He stalks Squidward because he genuinely cannot comprehend that Squidward wants to be left alone. These are not just character changes. These are fundamental differences in capability and understanding. The physical changes support the theory too. SpongeBob's voice becomes higher pitched starting in Season 4. Tom Kenny, the voice actor, confirmed he began pitching his voice differently for the character. A higher voice makes SpongeBob sound younger and more childlike. The animation style changed. SpongeBob's facial expressions became more exaggerated and manic. His eyes dilate larger. His smile stretches wider. His body language becomes more hyperactive. These changes make SpongeBob look and sound like a younger version of himself, because that's exactly what he is. He's the offspring, the child who doesn't have the life experience or development of the original. The humor changed to reflect this too. Early SpongeBob featured clever wordplay, situational comedy, and emotional storytelling. Post-movie SpongeBob relies on gross-out jokes, physical slapstick, and absurdist humor aimed at younger children. The offspring, SpongeBob appeals to a younger audience because he is younger himself. His humor is more basic because his understanding is more basic. The timeline split explains the continuity issues that plague the series. The Krusty Krab 2 never appears again after the movie. SpongeBob is never referred to as manager. The movie's events are completely ignored. If Season 4 takes place before the movie, these absences make sense. But they also make sense if we're watching a different SpongeBob living through similar but slightly different experiences. The clone lives a parallel life. He works at the Krusty Krab. He lives next to Squidward. He's best friends with Patrick, but he hasn't lived through all the events the original SpongeBob experienced. He's living his own timeline, his own story. The show can never reference the movie because the movie is the dividing line between the 2 SpongeBobs. The movie is where one died and the other was born. Some fans argue against this theory by pointing out that Hillenburg intended Season 4 onward as prequels, which contradicts the death theory. But both explanations coexist perfectly. Hillenburg created a narrative excuse for why the show felt different. He said it takes place earlier in SpongeBob's life. This is true. The younger, more childish SpongeBob we see is living through earlier experiences. But the meta-explanation is that we're watching a different individual. The offspring. The clone. Hillenburg may not have intended this reading, but it fits the evidence better than any other theory. The death and reproduction explain why SpongeBob is fundamentally different in ways that go beyond just being younger. Others argue that it's just bad writing or different creative teams causing the changes. Season 4 was the first season without Hillenburg as showrunner. Many original writers and storyboard artists left. New people took over who had different ideas about what SpongeBob should be. This is factually true, but it doesn't explain the in-universe changes. Within the world of the show, why did SpongeBob become so different? The death theory provides an in-universe explanation that makes biological sense for his species. The theory gains more credibility when you consider what the movie represented thematically. The entire film was about SpongeBob proving he's not just a kid. Mr. Krabs doesn't promote him because he sees SpongeBob as a child. The whole journey to Shell City is SpongeBob trying to demonstrate his maturity and capability. He succeeds. He saves Bikini Bottom. He earns his promotion. The original SpongeBob completes his character arc. He proves he's an adult capable of handling responsibility. That story is finished. That SpongeBob's journey is complete. But Nickelodeon wanted more episodes. They couldn't continue with a mature SpongeBob who had completed his arc. So they reset him. Narratively, they called it prequels. But functionally, they replaced him with a younger version who could go through more childish adventures forever. The death and rebirth literalized this creative decision. The old SpongeBob died. A new one took his place. The horror of this theory makes it compelling. Imagine being the friends and family of original SpongeBob. Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Gary. They all watched SpongeBob dry out and seemingly die in Shell City. They believed he was gone. Then he came back. But the creature that returned looks like their friend, sounds mostly like their friend, has their friend's memories. But it's not quite the same person. It's younger, less capable, more annoying, more exhausting to be around. Would they notice? Would they say anything? Or would they accept this new SpongeBob because the alternative is admitting their friend really died and never came back? Gary would know. Gary is smart enough to recognize the difference. But Gary can't tell anyone because he only meows. Gary has to live with an imposter who replaced his owner. That's genuinely dark. The theory transforms the SpongeBob SquarePants movie from a happy ending into something more bittersweet. SpongeBob and Patrick saved the day. They rescued Mr. Krabs. They defeated Plankton. But SpongeBob paid the ultimate price. He died doing it. The being that came back is his child, living with his memories, trying to fill his role. The promotion to manager means nothing because this new SpongeBob hasn't earned it. He's riding on the accomplishments of someone else. He's a replacement. The real SpongeBob, the one we followed from Help Wanted through 3 seasons of adventures and personal growth, ended his story under a heat lamp in a gift shop on land. He died believing he succeeded. He died happy. That's simultaneously beautiful and tragic. His offspring gets to live and have adventures, but never with the same depth or capability as the original. The series continues, but the heart of it died in 2004. SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the longest-running animated series in television history. It has entertained multiple generations, but for many fans, there are 2 distinct eras. Before the movie and after the movie, pre-movie SpongeBob and post-movie SpongeBob, Golden Age and Modern Era. The death theory explains this split in a way that honors both versions while acknowledging they're fundamentally different. The original SpongeBob was a complete character who finished his story. The new SpongeBob is his child, carrying on his legacy but never quite living up to the original. Some people prefer the newer, more cartoonish SpongeBob. Others mourn the loss of the clever, heartfelt original. Both reactions are valid because they're responding to genuinely different characters. 2 SpongeBobs. One died to save his friends. One lives forever in his place. That's the real story of Bikini Bottom. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that suggests SpongeBob has Asperger's syndrome or autism, the neurodivergent sponge. SpongeBob SquarePants is autistic. This is not fan speculation anymore. Tom Kenny, the voice actor who has brought SpongeBob to life since 1999, confirmed it publicly in 2024 at Motor City Comic Con in Detroit. When a fan on the autism spectrum asked Kenny directly if SpongeBob is autistic, Kenny responded without hesitation. Yes, of course he is. That's his superpower, the same way that's your superpower. The crowd cheered, autistic fans celebrated online. And suddenly, 25 years of SpongeBob's behavior made perfect sense. But here we need to understand something crucial. This revelation was not a retcon or a sudden decision to make SpongeBob neurodivergent for representation points. The evidence was always there in every episode. SpongeBob has displayed textbook autistic traits from the very first season. And once you recognize these patterns, you cannot watch the show without seeing SpongeBob as he truly is, a neurodivergent icon who represents millions of autistic people navigating a neurotypical world. Let's start with Tom Kenny's own words because they provide the foundation for understanding SpongeBob's neurodivergence. Kenny first addressed this topic publicly in 2012 during an appearance on Mark Maron's What the Fuck podcast, 12 years before his viral Comic-Con statement. Kenny explained that parents of autistic children and caretakers constantly told him that SpongeBob speaks to kids on the spectrum in a unique way. He said this feedback came up so often that someone should write a term paper on it. Kenny stated that SpongeBob is the thing autistic kids laugh at, obsess over, and memorize every line of every episode. Then Kenny offered his explanation. I don't know what there is in that show that talks to kids that are on the autism spectrum, but more than other cartoons, that one. Maybe because SpongeBob as a character is a little autistic. Obsessed with his job, very hardworking, gets really deep into something. Kenny identified specific autistic traits right there. Obsessive interests, deep focus, work ethic driven by passion rather than external rewards. These are not random personality quirks. They are core characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. And Kenny recognized them because he has voiced this character for decades and understands him better than anyone. The 2024 Comic-Con interaction provides even more context. A person on the spectrum approached Kenny and asked directly if SpongeBob is autistic. Kenny confirmed it immediately and then did something beautiful. He told the fan that autism is SpongeBob's superpower, just like it's their superpower. Kenny later reflected on this moment in an interview with Entertainment Weekly. He said he never meant for the conversation to go public. It was a private moment with a fan. But when it went viral, Kenny noticed it was empowering and helpful to people. He gave the autistic community something they desperately needed: validation from an official source that a beloved mainstream character represents them. Kenny later walked back slightly, clarifying that he's not a medical doctor and SpongeBob is imaginary, so he's not qualified to make diagnoses. But his core message remained: SpongeBob exhibits autistic traits, and autistic fans see themselves in him for good reason. Now let's examine the canonical evidence from the show itself. SpongeBob displays multiple diagnostic criteria for autism spectrum disorder across hundreds of episodes. The most obvious trait is his difficulty reading social cues. SpongeBob constantly fails to recognize when he's bothering people. Squidward expresses annoyance, frustration, and outright anger in every interaction with SpongeBob. Squidward uses explicit verbal cues. He says, "Go away." He says, "I don't want you here." He says, "Leave me alone." SpongeBob does not process these messages. He interprets Squidward's hostility as playful banter between friends. He shows up at Squidward's house uninvited constantly. He invades Squidward's personal space without understanding boundaries. He continues behaviors that clearly upset Squidward because he cannot read the social signals that would tell a neurotypical person to stop. This is not SpongeBob being intentionally rude or malicious. He genuinely does not understand that Squidward wants distance. His brain processes social information differently than neurotypical people. He misses subtext, tone, and body language. He takes friendly interactions as invitations for more closeness, even when the other person is uncomfortable. Mrs. Puff provides another clear example of SpongeBob's social difficulties. Mrs. Puff experiences severe anxiety and stress every time SpongeBob enters her boating school. She shows obvious signs of distress. She trembles, she panics, she has PTSD-like responses to SpongeBob's presence. SpongeBob does not notice. He remains cheerful and oblivious to her suffering. He thinks they have a normal student-teacher relationship, despite the fact that Mrs. Puff has literally been sent to prison because of his actions. A neurotypical person would pick up on Mrs. Puff's fear and adjust their behavior. SpongeBob continues as if nothing is wrong because he cannot read her emotional state accurately. His difficulty with social cues is not selective. It affects his interactions with everyone. Literal thinking is another major autistic trait that SpongeBob displays consistently. The episode Missing Identity provides the perfect example. SpongeBob loses his name tag and panics because he believes he has lost his identity. Patrick suggests that SpongeBob should retrace his steps to find the missing item. This is common advice. Neurotypical people understand retrace your steps as a metaphor, meaning to mentally review your actions and locations from the day. SpongeBob takes it literally. He physically recreates his entire morning routine. He gets back in bed and pretends to wake up. He repeats his alarm going off. He falls down the stairs again. He feeds Gary again. He tastes Gary's disgusting snail food multiple times, even though he hates it. He performs every single action from his morning in the exact same way because Patrick told him to retrace his steps. Patrick has to say his morning greeting of, "Hi, SpongeBob," at the correct moment. SpongeBob makes Patrick repeat this greeting over and over until they get the timing exactly right. SpongeBob is not being silly or comedic. He genuinely believes that literal physical repetition is what retracing your steps means. This is classic autistic literal thinking. Metaphors and figurative language do not compute naturally. Instructions must be concrete and specific. SpongeBob's obsessive routines demonstrate another autistic characteristic. He follows the same schedule every single day. He wakes up at the same time. He feeds Gary the same food. He says hello to Patrick. He walks the same path to work. He arrives at the Krusty Krab at the same time. He performs his job duties in the same order. Disruptions to this routine cause SpongeBob significant distress. In Missing Identity, the loss of his name tag threatens his routine and sends him into crisis mode. In multiple episodes, changes to SpongeBob's schedule or environment trigger anxiety and panic. Autistic people often rely on routines and sameness to manage sensory overload and maintain emotional regulation. Routines provide predictability in an unpredictable world. SpongeBob's rigid adherence to his daily patterns is not laziness or lack of imagination. It is a coping mechanism that helps him function. When the routine breaks, SpongeBob struggles. This is authentic autistic experience portrayed in animated form. Special interests are perhaps the most recognizable autistic trait SpongeBob exhibits. He is obsessed with his job at the Krusty Krab. This obsession goes far beyond normal employee enthusiasm. SpongeBob's entire identity revolves around being a fry cook. He talks about making Krabby Patties constantly. He dreams about making Krabby Patties. He practices making Krabby Patties at home for fun. He has developed elaborate techniques for every aspect of fry cooking. He knows the exact timing for flipping patties. He has specific methods for spreading condiments. He treats spatula as a sacred tool. This is his special interest, and he has achieved expert-level knowledge through hyperfocus and dedicated practice. Autistic special interests are characterized by intense fascination with specific topics, accumulation of detailed knowledge, and tendency to talk about the interest frequently, regardless of whether others share the enthusiasm. SpongeBob embodies all of these traits. He infodumps about fry cooking to anyone who will listen. He assumes everyone shares his passion for Krabby Patties even when they clearly do not. His special interest brings him immense joy and serves as his primary source of self-esteem. Jellyfishing serves as SpongeBob's secondary special interest. He engages in jellyfishing with the same intensity and dedication he brings to fry cooking. He knows different jellyfish species. He has techniques for catching them. He and Patrick can spend entire days jellyfishing without getting bored. This hobby provides SpongeBob with predictable sensory input and repetitive motions that many autistic people find soothing. The act of chasing jellyfish, catching them, and releasing them creates a satisfying loop that SpongeBob never tires of. His enthusiasm for jellyfishing does not diminish over time. He approaches it with fresh excitement every single time. This sustained intense interest in a specific activity is characteristic of autistic special interests. Sensory processing differences appear throughout the series as well. SpongeBob has heightened sensitivity to certain stimuli. He experiences physical sensations very intensely. In multiple episodes, SpongeBob reacts to minor discomforts as if they are overwhelming. He has meltdowns over small problems. He cries frequently and excessively. His emotional regulation is not typical for his age. He swings from extreme happiness to extreme distress with little middle ground. This emotional volatility often stems from sensory overload and inability to process multiple stimuli simultaneously. Autistic people frequently experience emotions more intensely and have difficulty modulating their responses. SpongeBob's crying fits are not childishness. They are emotional dysregulation triggered by overstimulation or unexpected changes. SpongeBob's voice and speech patterns also indicate neurodivergence. His voice is high-pitched and distinctive. Tom Kenny pitches his voice in a way that sounds younger and more energetic than typical adult speech. SpongeBob's laugh is loud, frequent, and sometimes inappropriate in timing. He laughs at things others do not find funny. He giggles excessively when excited. His volume control is inconsistent. He yells when he should speak quietly. He does not modulate his tone based on social context. These vocal irregularities are common in autistic individuals who may struggle with prosody, volume regulation, and understanding when their voice is too loud or unusual for the situation. SpongeBob's distinctive voice is not just a character choice for animation. It reflects how autistic people sometimes sound different from neurotypical speakers. Motor coordination difficulties appear frequently. SpongeBob is clumsy and accident-prone. He falls down constantly. He trips over his own feet. He crashes into objects. He has difficulty with fine motor tasks outside of fry cooking. His handwriting is messy. His attempts at other physical activities often fail spectacularly. However, within his area of expertise, fry cooking, SpongeBob demonstrates incredible precision and coordination. This pattern of significant motor challenges in most areas combined with exceptional skill in one specific domain is consistent with autistic motor profiles. Many autistic people have dyspraxia or coordination difficulties that make everyday physical tasks challenging, while simultaneously excelling at specialized movements within their special interest areas. SpongeBob struggles with learning to drive. Provide another data point. He has failed his boating test hundreds of times. He experiences severe anxiety during driving tests. He cannot generalize his driving skills from practice to testing situations. He understands driving intellectually but cannot execute it under pressure. Performance anxiety, difficulty with task switching, and problems applying learned skills in new contexts are all common autistic challenges. SpongeBob is not stupid. He is intelligent and capable within familiar parameters, but introducing variables like Mrs. Puff's presence during a test or the pressure of being evaluated causes his skills to collapse. This is not character comedy. This is realistic portrayal of how anxiety and sensory overload affect autistic performance. The episode I Had an Accident demonstrates SpongeBob's anxiety and catastrophic thinking. After injuring himself, SpongeBob develops an intense fear of going outside. He stays in his house, refusing to leave because he has concluded that the outside world is too dangerous. He engages in black and white thinking, where a single negative experience means all future similar experiences will be negative. Patrick and Sandy try to convince SpongeBob to come outside. SpongeBob refuses. He creates elaborate scenarios in his head about all the terrible things that could happen. This catastrophic thinking and difficulty recovering from negative experiences reflects autistic anxiety patterns. Once SpongeBob's sense of safety is disrupted, restoring it requires significant effort and support from others. Friendship patterns also reveal SpongeBob's neurodivergence. He has one close friend, Patrick. Patrick is also neurodivergent in different ways. SpongeBob and Patrick connect because they operate on similar wavelengths. They engage in parallel play like children, even though they are adults. They pursue interests together without needing complex social negotiations. Their friendship is uncomplicated and based on shared activities rather than emotional intimacy. SpongeBob struggles to form friendships with neurotypical characters like Squidward because his social approach does not match theirs. He misunderstands Squidward's friendship signals completely. Sandy tolerates SpongeBob but maintains distance. Mr. Krabs exploits SpongeBob's loyalty without reciprocating genuine friendship. SpongeBob's small social circle and difficulty connecting with neurotypical peers mirrors real autistic social experiences. The show itself has become a special interest for autistic viewers. Tom Kenny noted that autistic kids memorize every line of every episode. They watch the same episodes repeatedly without losing interest. They quote SpongeBob constantly. They incorporate SpongeBob references into their communication. This pattern of intense, sustained engagement with media is classic autistic behavior. When autistic people find media that resonates with them, they consume it obsessively. SpongeBob resonates because autistic viewers recognize themselves in him. They see their literal thinking, they see their special interests, they see their social struggles, they see someone who experiences the world the way they do. SpongeBob is representation that existed before anyone officially acknowledged it as representation. Some people argue against diagnosing fictional characters or labeling SpongeBob as autistic. They say it's reading too much into a cartoon designed for entertainment. They point out that many cartoon characters display exaggerated traits that resemble various conditions but are not intended as representation. These objections miss the point. Whether Steven Hillenburg consciously intended SpongeBob to be autistic or not is irrelevant. Autistic people recognize themselves in SpongeBob because the traits are there. Tom Kenny, who knows this character better than anyone else alive, confirmed that SpongeBob is autistic. Medical professionals who work with autistic children report that their patients connect with SpongeBob more than any other cartoon character. The evidence is overwhelming. SpongeBob displays enough autism diagnostic criteria to meet DSM-5 thresholds. His autistic traits are consistent across episodes and seasons. They define his character at a fundamental level. This revelation matters tremendously for autistic representation in media. SpongeBob SquarePants is one of the most successful and beloved cartoon characters ever created. He has entertained multiple generations across 25 years. He is a cultural icon recognized worldwide, and he is autistic. Autistic children now have mainstream representation that validates their experiences. They can point to SpongeBob and say, "He's like me." They can explain their literal thinking, their special interests, their social difficulties, and their sensory sensitivities by referencing episodes of SpongeBob. Parents can better understand their autistic children by watching SpongeBob and recognizing shared traits. Teachers can use SpongeBob as a tool for building empathy and understanding neurodivergent students. The impact extends far beyond the show itself. Tom Kenny's decision to confirm SpongeBob's autism publicly was an act of advocacy. He could have deflected the question. He could have given a vague answer. He could have said SpongeBob is just a goofy cartoon character. Instead, Kenny affirmed an autistic fan's self-identification with SpongeBob. He called autism a superpower. He validated autistic experience in a public forum. That moment meant everything to the fan who asked the question and to thousands of autistic people watching the video online. Representation saves lives. Seeing yourself reflected in media reduces feelings of isolation and otherness. SpongeBob has been saving autistic kids for 25 years just by existing. Now that Kenny has confirmed it officially, that representation becomes even more powerful. SpongeBob SquarePants works at the Krusty Krab. He lives in a pineapple. He has a pet snail named Gary, and he is neurodivergent. His autism is not a flaw or a punchline. It is part of who he is. His literal thinking leads to comedy, but also to problem solving. His obsessive interests make him the best fry cook in Bikini Bottom. His difficulty with social cues creates conflict, but also innocence and optimism. His routines provide stability. His special interests bring joy. SpongeBob succeeds in his life not despite being autistic, but because his autism gives him unique strengths. That is the message autistic viewers have received from SpongeBob all along. That is why they love him. That is why he matters. SpongeBob SquarePants is autistic, and that is his superpower. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mr. Krabs' dark secret, Pearl's mother, and possible cannibalism. Eugene Harold Krabs owns the Krusty Krab. He lives in a hollow anchor with his teenage daughter Pearl. And here we need to talk about something that fans have whispered about since the show's earliest days. Pearl is a whale, Mr. Krabs is a crab, and Pearl's mother has never appeared in a single episode. Not once, not ever. The show has deliberately kept this mystery alive for over 2 decades. Steven Hillenburg himself was so against revealing Pearl's origin that he personally shelved an entire episode about it during Season 5. The writers had a full outline ready. Production had started early development stages, and Hillenburg shut it down. He wanted this secret to remain a secret forever. That decision tells us something important. Whatever the truth is about Pearl's mother, the creators knew it was better left to our imaginations, and our imaginations have conjured some truly disturbing possibilities. According to the official SpongeBob SquarePants trivia book, Pearl's mother, Mrs. Krabs, was a whale who married Mr. Krabs and gave birth to Pearl. That is the official canonical answer. Mr. Krabs was married to a whale. They had a daughter together. And then something happened to Mrs. Krabs. She vanished. She disappeared from Pearl's life so completely that Pearl barely remembers her. Photos from Selling Out show Mr. Krabs raising baby Pearl entirely alone with no mother present. When Roger Bumpass and Lori Allen discussed Mrs. Krabs at DragonCon in 2016, Allen confirmed that Mrs. Krabs' whereabouts are secret, while Bumpass joked that she was taken to SeaWorld. That joke lands differently when you think about what SeaWorld actually represents. It represents whales being captured, imprisoned, separated from their families, killed. The joke might be darker than it seems. Mr. Krabs himself offers cryptic clues throughout the series. He uses the phrase, mother of Pearl, when startled or dismayed, which references the absence of Pearl's mother. Think about that for a moment. The phrase, mother of Pearl, is an exclamation of shock, but in Mr. Krabs' world, it takes on literal meaning. Pearl's mother, the whale who gave birth to his daughter, the woman who disappeared. Every time Mr. Krabs says that phrase, he is invoking her memory. He is acknowledging her absence. He is revealing his guilt. Or his grief. Or both. Pearl's name itself was chosen as a homage to the phrase, mother of pearl, which describes the inner layer of some mollusk shells. Pearl is literally named after her missing mother. That is not a coincidence. That is a memorial. But here's where the theory takes its darkest turn. Mr. Krabs is the only crab in Bikini Bottom aside from his mother, though some crabs appeared in Cracked Crabs from outside Bikini Bottom. Think about what that means. In a bustling underwater city filled with hundreds of different species, crabs are virtually extinct. Mr. Krabs stands alone. His species has vanished. And he owns a restaurant called the Krusty Krab, a restaurant whose signature item is the Krabby Patty, a burger so delicious that customers line up around the block to eat it. So addictive that Plankton has spent decades trying to steal the secret formula. So profitable that Mr. Krabs has become the wealthiest citizen in Bikini Bottom. What makes that burger so special? What is the secret ingredient? The Krusty Krab menu includes self-explanatory items like kelp shakes made of kelp and coral bits, which would suggest the Krabby Patty is made of crab meat. The logic is simple and horrifying. Every other menu item names its primary ingredient. The pattern is consistent throughout the menu, so the Krabby Patty must be made of crab. Nickelodeon denied this theory on Instagram, stating that Krabby Patties are definitely not made from crabs. But of course, they would deny it. They have to deny it. The alternative is admitting that their family-friendly cartoon features cannibalism as a plot point. They cannot confirm that Mr. Krabs murdered his entire species to create a successful restaurant. They cannot tell children that the jolly restaurant owner is actually a serial killer who ground up his relatives to make hamburgers, so they deny it. But the evidence remains. Mr. Krabs is the only crab. His restaurant serves Krabby Patties. His species has disappeared. The math is simple and horrifying, and if Mr. Krabs is capable of cannibalizing his own species for profit, what else might he be capable of? What happened to Mrs. Krabs? Why did she disappear? Could the secret formula's success have required additional ingredients beyond just crab meat? The whale meat theory extends the horror even further. Some fans suggest whale meat is another possible ingredient, which could explain what happened to Pearl's mother, who is confirmed to be a whale in supplementary materials. Think about this possibility. Mr. Krabs perfects his Krabby Patty formula using crab meat from his own species. The burgers become wildly successful, but eventually his supply runs out. There are only so many crabs in Bikini Bottom. He has already used them all. He needs a new ingredient, something equally delicious, something that will keep customers coming back. And then he meets Mrs. Krabs, a whale, large, full of meat, profitable. Maybe he married her genuinely, maybe he loved her once. But when the restaurant needed a new ingredient, when profits demanded innovation, when greed overcame whatever humanity remained in his crustacean heart, he made a choice. A horrible choice. A choice that would haunt him forever but make him wealthy beyond imagination. He killed his wife, he ground her into burger meat, he served her to his customers. And when Pearl was born, he kept her alive, not out of love but out of utility. She represents his last connection to his wife, his final reminder of his humanity. Or she represents a future ingredient, a backup plan, a way to keep the Krabby Patties profitable for years to come. The evidence for Mr. Krabs' capacity for murder appears explicitly in Nasty Patty. In this episode, Mr. Krabs believes a health inspector is a con artist, so he orders SpongeBob to create a tainted Krabby Patty, meant to make the inspector sick. The health inspector appears to die after choking on a fly. Instead of calling for help, Mr. Krabs immediately wants to dispose of the body, showing surprising calmness and confidence throughout the process. Watch that episode again with the cannibalism theory in mind. Mr. Krabs does not panic. He does not hesitate. He does not suggest calling authorities or explaining what happened. His first instinct is disposal. Hide the body, bury the evidence. Make the corpse disappear. SpongeBob shows remorse and distress, but Mr. Krabs just wants to eliminate the body as quickly as possible. That reaction suggests practice, experience, familiarity with corpse disposal. Mr. Krabs has done this before. He knows exactly how to hide a body. He has a system, and he executes that system with mechanical efficiency. This is not his first body. This is not his first murder. He has killed before, multiple times, enough times that disposal has become routine. In Out of the Picture, Mr. Krabs tries to kill Squidward because he believes Squidward's art would be worth more with him dead, even attempting to bash his head with a mallet. Mr. Krabs is willing to murder his own employees for profit. He values money over human life, or in this case, over cephalopod life. If he would kill Squidward for art money, why wouldn't he kill his own species for restaurant money? If he would murder SpongeBob's squid colleague, why wouldn't he murder his own wife? The pattern is consistent. Mr. Krabs kills when it profits him. He disposes of bodies when necessary. He feels no remorse. He expresses no guilt. He is a businessman, a capitalist, a creature who has commodified murder itself. And Pearl's mother was just another commodity. But there is another theory, a kinder theory, a theory that reframes Mr. Krabs not as a murderer, but as a savior. This theory suggests that Pearl was never Mr. Krabs' biological daughter at all. A popular fan theory proposes that Mr. Krabs found Pearl next to her dead mother, who was killed by whalers using hooks. Imagine the scene. Mr. Krabs is walking along the ocean floor. Maybe he is hunting for money, maybe he is searching for ingredients. And he discovers a baby whale crying next to a massive corpse, her mother, dead, killed by hooks from the surface. Pearl is alone, helpless, orphaned, and Mr. Krabs, despite his greed, despite his selfishness, despite every terrible impulse in his money-obsessed heart, decides to save her. He takes Pearl home, he raises her as his own. He gives her everything, not because she is profitable, not because she provides ingredients, but because he couldn't save her mother, because he failed to protect one whale, so he will protect this one. He will spend his fortune making Pearl happy. He will sacrifice his wealth, giving her everything she wants. The theory notes that Mr. Krabs shows extreme fear of hooks and warns SpongeBob and Patrick about their dangers in hooky. That fear is not random. That fear is traumatic. Mr. Krabs has seen what hooks can do. He has witnessed their devastation firsthand. He has found a dead whale killed by hooks, and that experience traumatized him so deeply that even decades later, he panics when he sees SpongeBob and Patrick playing near them. The hooks killed Pearl's mother. They almost killed Pearl. And Mr. Krabs will never let hooks hurt anyone he loves ever again. John Negroni, creator of the Pixar theory, suggested that Mr. Krabs' extreme fear of hooks in Hooky implies they were involved in the death of Pearl's mother. This interpretation fits perfectly with Mr. Krabs' character. He loves money more than anything, but he gives Pearl whatever she wants. He buys her expensive clothes. He pays for her birthday parties. He tolerates her mood swings. He sacrifices his wealth for her happiness. Why? Because he rescued her. Because he failed to save her mother but succeeded in saving her. Because Pearl represents his one genuinely good deed in a lifetime of selfishness. She is his redemption, his proof that underneath all the greed and capitalism and exploitation, there remains a tiny spark of decency. He named her Pearl not just as a reference to mother of pearl, but because she is precious to him, valuable, irreplaceable, worth more than all the money in his vault. Mr. Krabs cherishes pearls because they're worth money, but his daughter Pearl is priceless to him. That is why he keeps her safe. That is why he protects her. Not because she is useful, but because he loves her. Because she is the only thing in his entire life that matters more than profit. Both theories explain the evidence. Both theories account for Mrs. Krabs' disappearance. Both theories justify Mr. Krabs' behavior toward Pearl. The cannibalism theory paints Mr. Krabs as a monster, a serial killer who murdered his entire species and his own wife for profit. A creature so consumed by greed that he would literally consume other creatures to maintain his wealth. The rescue theory paints Mr. Krabs as a flawed hero, a greedy businessman who nonetheless saved an orphaned whale and raised her with genuine love, a father who gives his daughter everything despite having no biological connection to her. Which theory is true? The show will never confirm either. Hillenburg took that secret to his grave, but the evidence supports both possibilities, and that ambiguity is what makes the theory so compelling. Consider the Krusty Krab itself. The restaurant's sign is a clamshell, which could represent a trophy on Mr. Krabs' wall, as he once hunted clams for their pearls. Clams produce pearls through suffering. A grain of sand irritates the clam's soft tissue. The clam coats that irritation with nacre, layer after layer, transforming pain into beauty. Eventually, a pearl forms, something precious born from something agonizing. Pearl Krabs is the same. She is Mr. Krabs' pearl, something beautiful that emerged from trauma. Whether that trauma was caused by Mr. Krabs murdering her mother or Mr. Krabs discovering her mother's corpse doesn't change the fundamental truth. Pearl exists because of tragedy. She survives because Mr. Krabs protects her, and Mr. Krabs protects her because she reminds him of what he lost, or what he destroyed. The ambiguity is intentional. The show wants us to question, to wonder, to theorize. The truth about Mrs. Krabs will never be revealed. The show has committed to that mystery, but the evidence scattered throughout the series points toward dark possibilities. Mr. Krabs is capable of murder. He has disposed of bodies before. He operates a restaurant named after his own species, in a town where his species has vanished. His wife disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He raised a whale daughter who looks nothing like him. He fears hooks with traumatic intensity. He gives Pearl everything despite his legendary greed. All of these facts are canonical. All of these facts are undeniable. The question is not whether something terrible happened to Mrs. Krabs. The question is whether Mr. Krabs caused that terrible thing, or merely witnessed it. Did he murder his wife for profit? Or did he rescue her orphaned daughter from whalers? Did he create the Krabby Patty formula from his victims? Or did he perfect that formula independently while building a life with the whale he saved? The show gives us evidence for both interpretations, and that is exactly what makes this theory so disturbing. Because either answer transforms Mr. Krabs into something different. Either he is a murderer who commodified cannibalism, or he is a father who overcame greed to love an adopted daughter. Both possibilities exist simultaneously. Both possibilities explain the evidence, and we will never know which possibility is true. Steven Hillenburg made sure of that. He shelved the origin episode. He kept Mrs. Krabs off screen. He maintained the mystery until his death, because some secrets are more powerful when they remain secret. Some questions are more interesting than any possible answer. Mr. Krabs lives in an anchor with his whale daughter. He serves Krabby Patties at his restaurant. He is the only crab in Bikini Bottom. And somewhere in the dark depths of the ocean, there is a truth about Pearl's mother that we will never fully understand. A truth about hooks and whales and crabs and murder and love and greed and redemption. A truth that haunts every mother of pearl exclamation. A truth that explains why Steven Hillenburg refused to solve this mystery. Because the mystery is the point. The uncertainty is what makes the theory work. We cannot know whether Mr. Krabs is a villain or a hero. We cannot determine whether Pearl should fear him or trust him. We can only watch him give her his credit card, watch him tolerate her spending, watch him sacrifice his beloved money for her happiness, and wonder what terrible secret motivated such generosity. What did Mr. Krabs do to Mrs. Krabs? What really happened to Pearl's mother? The show will never tell us. And maybe that silence is the most disturbing answer of all. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.